Hello guys, welcome back to Parkour Guide. Today we're looking at rank 13, the long-awaited episode. I know it's been a while since I made one of these, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, we're looking at rank 13 or rank XIII or rank XIII on Linkcraft. The notable difference between this map and the previous map, which was rank XIII, is kind of like the structure. So on XIII, the difficulty came from a lot of the really hard failsafe sections. Like there were some hard transitions, but there were also a lot of really hard failsafes. Like room 5 is notable, room 8 and 9 are notable. Those last two rooms are also notable. But on this rank, a lot of the difficulty comes from the life or death sections. So you'll notice that there's a lot of floating sky parkour. And it's easy, but there's just a lot of it. So what'll happen as you play this map is you'll probably fail the transitions a lot of times, but you can get to those places really quickly. And for example, when I played this map, on the last day I was attempting it, I got to sky 3 times in the same day, and on that third one I finally beat it. So you can make a lot of progress very quickly on this map, whereas on XIII it feels like it's a grind, it takes forever to get anywhere, but so you might like that style of map. I personally kind of enjoyed it, but it's kind of a personal preference sort of thing. You can figure out as you play it whether you like this. So anyway, we can get started with the actual jumps. It's kind of a weird start to the map. This is, there are like 12 islands, and this one, some people call this Island 0, some people call it Island 1. It doesn't really matter too much. For this first jump, you can do one unshift tap and force momentum like that, or you could go to like the front iron bar, run back and run forward, something like that. Not too hard. For this ladder jump, you could treat this like a normal XIII, so you could do 3 taps back and face out of it in head hitter and do some strafe, like 2, maybe 3 ticks after jumping is best with angle like this, or you could do 1 shift tap back facing about the same angle in A7 head hitter. But above all of those, I'd probably recommend going to the back of the block, face slightly out, and then jam, and then you can land. Sorry, you might have to do a tap or 2. You can do 2 taps to land on top of the ladder, and that way you can just avoid any of the hard turns entirely. And you could also do that with jump jam instead if you prefer to. Just force momentum this, do a little turn. For X facing iron bar neos, you do 2 shift taps back and semi head hitter with no sprint. Or from the back corner, you can sprint semi head hitter, and of course you have to be mindful of the 3 block ceiling. Just Presky over here. For this jump, you can face 104 and semi head hitter, and then it'll just bounce off if I can get A7. And then it'll just bounce onto the slab. This jump's a little tricky. You can head hitter this if you want, but another alternate strat is if you face 98 and then do 1 unshift tap with A, you can do 1 to 3 tick Presky, and that just avoids any tick timings there, which could otherwise be a little bit failable. For this slab to ladder, you can go to 0.15 on the right edge, face 110, or you could flip it for the other side, so that would be 0.15 face, what that be, 80 I guess, or I guess it would be 70. Then you can do jam or head hitter. There's 2 main ways you can do this. You can either stop on the ladder and turn like this and strafe early after jumping, try to slow yourself down, or you can turn just a little bit and strafe a little bit and chain it to the iron bar, whichever you feel comfortable with, and you can either get jam or head hitter for that. For this, line up with the wood, scoot along this way, and then you're just going to 4 tick. So you're just lining up with the back wall and then 4 ticking. And then you can also get 3 tick. So it's still multi-tick. That's just a quick way to set it up. Go around the edge of this island. Force momentum this. For this, there's a couple ways you can do this. If you want, you can kind of just like run it like this with some random like 4 tick chords, 5 tick chords. You can copy this if you want. So that's 0.46 face 157 and 5 tick with an early strafe. But you can also get some more momentum for this, which I would probably recommend instead. For example, you can do from the back of this block, if you face 154, you can force momentum and hold space, and then you want to strafe with WD 1 tick after jumping. The tricky part about this is you get a lot of speed outward, which can be a little bit hard to control. So if you get like a 2 tick strafe by accident, you can get like very little distance. So the strat I would actually recommend would probably be this one, where you go to the front left corner here, face 164, and then semi head hitter with a 2 tick strafe. that means you strafe 2 ticks after you jump off the fence, and you're going to be holding space, so don't like run a tick on the fence or anything. You can also strafe 3 ticks after, so it's a multi-tick strafe timing, and I generally find this pretty lenient. So the main thing is don't strafe too early and hit this pane like that. It's the one thing you want to avoid there. Go to the front, semi-head hitter, not too hard here. Cool. Then you have your first somewhat tricky jump. For this one, there's a few different strategies. The tricky part about this is you both have to get a lot of distance to get on the ladder because it's kind of far away. And it's also tricky to stay on just because you have so much speed that you can't really stop yourself. I'll give you 2 strategies you can use for this. If you go to 0.4 on this edge of this block, face 135, you can jam and then strafe 1 tick after jumping with a smooth turn. You have to turn quite far because you have to like completely stop yourself because you can fall off on like either axis. Like you could get too much speed, and so you have to turn all the way around basically because you can get too much speed otherwise, and you have to stop yourself. One thing, you can jump jam this, but if you jump jam, just make sure you don't get A7 because A7 will over jump the momentum. It's specifically for jam. And then another alternate strategy, if you don't like that turn, there's one that's kind of similar, a little bit different. If you go to this corner, face 144, you can head hitter with strafe on jump, so it's a 0-tick strafe. And it's kind of the same thing, except it's gets you a little more speed. It kind of takes care of some of the turn for you just because you get a lot more speed outward. One thing is that if you turn too early and too fast, you can hit this front edge. So maybe start with a slow turn, and then you can like speed up as you're trying to stop yourself. So there's a few different ways you can do that. For this cobble wall to slab, you can just find like random force momentum chords or like run it or something. But if you want a setup, I can give you a setup. Start from the back left corner of the cobble wall and face 158, 3 unshift taps with W, 1 unshift tap with D, and 1 shift tap with D. And then you can just force momentum. You want to aim for an early strafe because that'll give you the most possible like distance, but you can get like some of the later strafes and you'll still make this. You don't have to get max force momentum. But yeah, just aim for early strafe, aim for early turn. It's not too precise. Just do 3 taps there. This isn't too hard as I fall off, of course. Just take your time with that. For this trapdoor to ladder, there's like a couple ways you can do it. You can do it like the normal way where you grab the ladder, so you could do 1 shift tap back, face like 105, and A7 head hitter with some like 3-tick strafe, and then you can just like grab the ladder. Another way you could do it is if you go to the back, you can do 1 shift tap forward, face like 102-ish, 103, and same thing except now maybe an earlier strafe with that, and do head hitter. But you can also land on top of the ladder. There's a few ways you can do that. One was with the trapdoor flipped down. If you go to 0.55 on this edge, face slightly outward and A7 head hitter. I have to face out a bit more. Then you can land on top of the ladder, just with like a little turn in. You need, and then you want to retap space, and you can either turn in a lot when you retap space like that to jump to the slab, or you can jump with WD just to help assist you getting over there, make it a little bit easier, or you can even turn around all the way if you really want to. Another thing you can do is if you go to 0.85 on this edge, you can do the same thing except head hitter timing. So same advice applies there. And then one last strategy, if you're a 1 jumper, you can go to this back corner and you can have like a full no turn. You have to do max pain and force momentum with A, which is when you do max Pessi with A, and then walk a tick, and then jump with WD. And that's wood side step is what this is. So this is a full no turn if you want to, but it's kind of overcomplicated and not really necessary. For this water, you can of course do it the normal way. This is not too precise, but you can also jam from here and go straight into the second water. And then just bounce near the top of this water, not too precise. This would be considered like the island 1 to 2 transition, but it's kind of short. You want to do 3 unshift taps, facing 135, and 1 shift tap, and just force momentum this, not too hard. For this slime, phase 136, just do 1 unshift tap, and then you can either do max Pessi, or you can do 2-tick Pessi, and both of them will no turn, no strafe onto the lower part of Island 2 down here. Some people call this part of the Island 1 to 2 transition. Some people call this the life or death portion of Island 2. So there's a few different names for it. The intended way is to, if you want to find some like random jam chords, maybe something like this that's a little outward, facing like -48, just so you have a little bit of room, so that you don't accidentally hit this wall when you're coming forward. Just some random jam chords. You can copy these if you want, and you can grab the ladder, and then you would continue along that. But there is a the unintended route is to go from this block, and you can like head hitter straight onto this ladder. It is a little bit precise, and you also want to be careful that you don't like slide off this, because this stair is a little jank in 1.8, so you can like slide off, and it's kind of annoying. But the advantage of doing it like this is that this is fully failsafe as long as you don't like slide off. Whereas like this, then you might do something stupid where you'll hit the wall and you get cooked, right? But it is only one jump, and then you just like semi-head hitter this, making sure you're at the, whenever you're dealing with these, you're at the true corner before you do this, because otherwise you might hit the wall for an extra tick and fall. For this ladder to iron bar jumps, now both the routes are at the same spot at this point. You can go to 0.4 on the edge and face like 135. And you're going to semi-head hitter with like a 1-tick strafe. Actually, I might recommend like a bit more inward, maybe like 140. Could even do like, maybe like 145. Yeah, 145 is pretty nice. Semi-head hitter, 0.4 facing 145. And it's fairly easy. You can strafe like several ticks after, and it still works. It's pretty lenient, so you can mess around with angles a bit if you want. For this, just like 3 taps and 4 tick, and then just try and like fit in there. This might actually be full no turn with 3 to 4 tick. I guess not. You can copy this if you want. It's 168, 3 taps, and then 3 to 4 tick, and then just strafe once you're inside of there, whether you get 3 tick or 4 tick, to kind of like assist with getting enough distance to that ladder. You can like momentum this, or you can set up like force momentum if you want, just to be safe. Then for this, make sure you're facing slightly rightward, and then force momentum that. This jump's a little annoying because at first glance it seems like it's a forced tick. If you want to do it a forced tick, then you could go to the front of this, you could head hitter, you could go against the cobble wall, and you can 2-tick. But there's also a no turn, which is multi-tick. And the way you're going to do that is do 0.55 on this edge and face 85.7. And then the general idea is you're going to jam and then jump with WA when you land. Now the reason this is multi-tick is because you can strafe 1 tick before jumping. And you can also strafe on jump. So there's 2 different ticks you can strafe on. And then on top of that, you can also do that same thing, but it also works with A7. So there's 4 different possible timings that work. Basically, you can get jam or A7, and then you can either strafe on jump or 1 tick before jump. And it's so everything's multi-tick basically. But like the primary one would be jam and strafe on jump, and it's full no turn. So it's pretty lenient like that, and that would be what I recommend. Just run onto this. Obviously don't fall in the lava. If you accidentally run off this, of course you have this trapdoor to fail safe, but okay. Just run these from the back, because when you have these long iron bars against a back wall, 4 tick fits like perfectly on them, so you don't want to do like a Pesky or anything. It's already optimal to just run it. Go to the front of this and just semi-head hitter. And then for this one, you do have a no turn. If you go to the corner and face 80, you can 4 tick with a 1 tick strafe or a 2 tick strafe, and both are no turn. If you accidentally run off, then you're safe down here, and if you jump early, then you're also safe down here. So just don't turn at all, and as long as you're within the general type of input, that is, you can't fall off, basically. It's really easy. For this, you can face 105 from the corner and 2 tick, or you can go to the front-ish and then like head hitter and land on top. I wouldn't recommend grabbing the ladder, just because it's kind of hard to like fit in there. And then regardless of what you do, there's so much stuff here to land on that you can't really fall down into the lava. Just semi-head hitter this. And then for this one, just face 50 and semi-head hitter, no turn, no strafe. And once you do that, you're officially onto Island 2. Now, again, that lower part, some people call that the life or death portion. This is the failsafe part. And then you have Island 3 is directly above this. It just starts by going to this ladder. Now, this is a extended Cairo ladder -0, but you have this like extra ladder blockage in the way. You could do this the same way that I recommended on rank X, which is if you do 0.49 face 82, and then you can run it with 5 tick and strafe like 1 to 2 ticks after jumping. Just you have to be a little bit more careful not to hit this blockage that's up here in this version, because it's kind of in the way now if you're not being careful. And then an even easier approach potentially is if you go from the back and just max Pesky. You can just land on top of the ladder. No particular chords for that, but it's not too hard. You can also, if you want to, you can do this kind of interesting skip where if you force momentum and then you do a pre-turn, you can get over here, but it's not much harder than the intended way. If you go the intended way, just line up in the center here and semi-head hitter. So it's not really that difficult. It doesn't really matter which one you choose to do. For this iron bar to ladder, face -26 from the back here, do 4 unshift taps, and then just force momentum. And you can do anywhere between 1 to 3 tick force momentum, but of course you want to aim for the faster one. You can also turn in at the end if you want to, just to help give yourself a little bit more confidence that you can get enough distance. For this, you can force momentum this from here, or if you want to, you can do 3 taps here, and then do something like this, and this is multi-tick 3 to 4 tick, and there's coordinates where if you do 0.44 face -15.5, and then it's no turn, no strafe, 3 to 4 tick, which is multi-tick. You just run this, or you can do a few taps there if you want to, whatever you feel comfortable with. For this, you can semi-head hitter from the front. That doesn't give you a lot of distance. You can also run back and then run forward, set coordinates, and then you can also do anywhere less than max force momentum, because max force momentum will, I guess at this angle it works, but in general, if you're facing straight, it overjumps. So generally like slightly slower than max force momentum is safe, and then just like an early strafe, something like that. Then go up this water. Then once you're up here, remember this is the Island 3 portion because it's separate from the below island. It's just kind of how we defined it. For this fenced soul sand, and go to the corner of this fence and face 18.5 and jam. Strafe 1 tick after jumping. And you can also strafe 2 ticks after. It's somewhat lenient. The main thing is you really don't have to turn too much. It's not too difficult. One thing I would be mindful of though is that if you fail, it is possible to like run off that. I've seen people do that all the time if you're not being careful. It's kind of an annoying way to get back up, but it is possible to walk off that. There are Pesky setups for this. I would say just don't use it because it's like the second jump, just like head hitter it. Same thing here, kind of. You can kind of just head hitter this, but if you want like a more multi-tech setup, you can do 0.21, face 5 out, 3 shift taps, and then run, and that'll be multi-tech. For this jump, I have a bunch of different ways you can do this. The like simplest possible approach is just like the lazy one. If you go to this corner, face 45 and head hitter, and then do some sort of like, basically any strafe timing is good. As long as you get the head hitter, it's pretty lenient because you're kind of bouncing off this wall to give you the speed you need. The one thing that you wouldn't want to do is turn and strafe early because you can kind of like avoid the hitting the wall entirely, and then you don't get like the bounce that makes this strat good. Better than that though would be to go from this edge 0.0 face 43 and semi head hitter, and then any strafe, any timing after jumping is pretty lenient here. It makes it by so much. It's not even difficult at all. And then if you want to try like a more kind of quirky strategy, you can skip this jump. If you go to this corner, face -7, do 2 unshift taps with D, 1 shift tap with A, and then head hitter timing and hold space. And you can jump straight to this block. The one thing that's a little annoying about this strategy is that if you get the wrong timing, you can kind of just like fall off. It's kind of unexpected, especially if you get jam. This is what jam looks like. You're gonna be surprised if you get the wrong timing. And also if you turn in early or something, you could lose some distance. So it's a strategy if you want to use it. I wouldn't really recommend it. It's just kind of interesting. For this, the angle you're going to use is 144. And then you can just do 5 tick or 6 tick. You don't have to turn or strafe or shift. It'll climb automatically because you're hugging the wall. And now you're on to island 3 to 4 transition. For this first jump, you can go straight to the right side of this, so you can skip one of the iron bar neos. You can run off this if you want to, just to avoid any shenanigans there. Front right corner, semi-headed or no sprint, or from the back, you can do the sprint strategy. Just be mindful of the 3 block ceiling. Scoot forward a bit here. 0.21 is the optimal force momentum chords, and they face like 13. And then just strafe inward after you pass the web. One thing that's notable about webs is because they don't have a hitbox. Although this is like X facing corner, because there's no hitbox, it's still Z facing. So you can actually take the web a tick later than if it was like a tick earlier than if it was like a full block, if it was X facing, because all webs are basically always Z facing. That's just a little interesting tidbit. And then this isn't too hard. You just need to find some nice multi-tick chords, something like this, that you can get this with 3 to 5 ticks. That's X.575 face like 23-ish, and then just strafe and turn late. Make sure you're past the web before you start turning in and trying to land on the ladder, and don't like get too much speed and fall off. This double neo, you could do it like a normal way, where with that same coordinates I showed you earlier, which was 0.21, phase 5, 3 shift taps, and then this will let you do anywhere between 3 to 5 tick. And then you could even chain this down to here if you want. But another even safer strategy is if you go from this corner, you can chain it in a way that's actually fairly consistent. You face -11, and you can do slow force momentum. Slow force momentum is basically when you do the slowest possible force momentum. It's when you sprint on the tick that you land. However, in this case, it's actually fairly lenient, because for several ticks before you land, you're hugging this pane. And so any timing that's like a bit before, like maybe like 4 ticks before, you have like 4 ticks of leniency, it's going to be the same speed as slow force momentum. So you have a ton of leniency on the exact timing that you could do here. And then you could either strafe in afterwards, I'd probably recommend that, or you could also try and turn in. The thing about turning in is you might get a jump angle and hit the wall like that, and that's not all that great. But then you could also turn after jump and do like that. And then of course you can also do chain all the way down to here if you want to. Otherwise you can do 3 taps and just run it, and not over jump, of course. Once you're here, you can of course semi-headed or this. It's 3 block ceiling, so your timing is going to be a little bit different though. Or you can use the same setup, which is 0.21, phase 5, 3 taps, and run it. And this is 3 shift taps for 1BM backward, and then 1 unshift tap for a block with a ladder on it. And then you force momentum over here, or you can go to the head too. There's barriers all around here, so this is like the lower part of Island 4. That transition we just did was like one of the more notable transitions, and from here it can be a little bit easier in the life or death sections. This jump is kind of difficult. There's a few different ways you can do it. You can face like 13 and you can head hitter. Thing is that it's not just a ladder to ladder +1, because you also have to avoid this upper ladder just like before on Island 2, which can make like staying on it pretty difficult. So you have to do like a late turn. You can't start turning until like 2 to 3 ticks after jumping, face like 13 and get like a 1 tick strafe. Another thing that you can do is if you do 0.27 on the back of the ladder, and make sure you're on like the true back, it should be as close to 0.425 as you can, and this should be 0.27, and then the angle is 13. Then you can do the same thing, except now you're going to do 2 tick. And the nice thing about that is you can get some extra speed so that it's just a little bit easier to get around that ladder. and just kind of like a smooth turn. You really want to try and get a ton of X distance and then do like a second turn once you grab the ladder to slow down, because getting the distance to the ladder is the most important part of beating the jump. And then another angle you can try, I showed you face 13 before. You can also try face 14 if you're hitting the ladder a lot. And if you want to do like a 2-tick strafe instead, you can also do face 11 with like a 2-tick strafe. And it's basically the same thing, except you don't have so much keyboard like panic going on trying to hit like a bunch of inputs at the same time. So you have a few different timings you can do there. Because this is a 3-block ceiling, do 1 unshift tap and force momentum, and you're just going to land on top of the ladder facing slightly outward. Semi-headed or this, and semi-headed or this, and then you're on to Island 4, except now you're on to like the top failsafe part. For this, I would just like head hit or this. It's kind of janky. You want to make sure that you get a ton of distance before you start strafing in. You can face like negative 25, and then just get try and get a lot of distance and strafe late so that you can grab it, but you don't want to hit the wall. The main thing is avoiding the wall because it's X facing. For this jump, I have a few different strategies that work depending on what you want to do. So you can go from this pane straight to that daylight sensor. That's not a daylight sensor, that's a sea lantern. So you would jump down here, and then you'd face 126.5 and do 1 shift tap. And then you would double jam, and it's just no turn, no strafe. The issue with that is it's just kind of a tick, which is a little annoying. If you want to go to the pane instead, you can also go from the back, but X.4, and then face 130. And then you would do like a turn in or a strafe at the end to like catch yourself on the pane. But it's kind of janky. You can mess around with the angle a bit too if you want to. Maybe I wouldn't do quite that angle, but and then if you want to, when you're fail-safing, you could jump onto the sea lantern instead of like catching yourself on the pane. So there's a few different ways you could do that. And then one kind of like interesting strategy you can use if you really want to is if you go from here, face 145.5, and then you can chain it if you sprint jam from here. And then what you would do is you would tap A for a tick when you land on the pane, on the first pane. So it's like a strafe jam if you know much about that. You can also do like a turn out if you want to. This is just a way if you really, really want to avoid a tick timing. This is something you can do, though it's kind of janky, kind of inconsistent. It's just like an alternate strategy. For this, face mostly straight, do 1 shift tap with D, 1 shift tap with W, Presky and pre-turn. 1 shift tap A, 1 shift tap with W, and then same thing, Presky and pre-turn. You can also strafe if you want to. I feel like it makes it a little bit easier to get the distance you need. Okay, and then for this jump across the gap, you can go from the front of the sea lantern and do 0.8 on Z from the edge and face negative 88. And you can just semi-headed her. You don't want to strafe until like you're fail-safing, like when you're already shifting basically, because that kind of loses you the distance. You want to be like facing as straight as you can until you're like landing basically. So you're going to use the turning to assist you in getting to the block rather than strafing. Face outward so that you can get like 6 tick, so that 6 tick and 5 tick both fit basically for this. For this block to ladder, you can go to the back corner here, 125, 2 unshift taps and force momentum. The angle is a lot outward because you want to make sure that you're not hitting this ladder or this pane. You want to strafe like probably 3 ticks after jumping and just like some smooth end to like slow yourself down. I would try to land like kind of outward in this direction so that you have like plenty of room, because the main thing is like slowing yourself down here. Like the distance is not that far, but you don't want to like hit that ladder. That's the main concern here, and that's what we're trying to avoid with the angle being somewhat far outward. Jump to this. Just face slightly inward, one shift tap and Presky. And then for this one, fortunately you can't semi-head hitter this, but you can face somewhat straight, a bit leftward. Or maybe, how about this? Go to the back corner, one shift tap with A, and then one unshift tap with W. And then you can do like a force momentum like this, and like try and turn in to fit in that gap. So that's one possibility for something that you can do there. And then you can also, if you do like a 3 taps back, you can find like a 1 to 2 tick like this. And this is no turn, no strafe. So you could copy this if you want. It's 0.05 face 96.5 and it's just 1 or 2 tick and no turns onto here. Shift to this front, no sprint semi-head hitter. If you really want to try hard, you can flick this trapdoor in practice mode and jump up here, but otherwise, there's probably a no turn, no strafe, like semi-head hitter you can do, like negative 128, you can semi-head hitter and then land on it and just re-jump on it. Jump over here, and then you go to this front part and semi-head hitter, or you can face straight and jump over here and then jump over here, whichever one you like. Just jump across. This is not too precise, just be mindful because the ladder hitbox is a little bit bigger, so you have to take it a bit wider. And then you have the infamous triple neo. People hate this jump. So go to the corner of this log, face 91.8. 1 shift tap with A, 2 shift taps with W, and then practice. You want to triple jam, which is when you jam and then instantly jump like at the fastest possible rate. And then let's see, it's a, how fast would it be? It's a 3 tick jump cycle, so how fast would it be? It would be about 7 clicks per second. 7 CPS is how fast you have to spam to do this. Which is really not that fast. You can also, but if you really want to, you can like rebind space to, you know, your mouse or something. A few things here is that you want to try and turn in rather than strafe in, but it is possible to like strafe in to make this if you really want to like no turn it. It's definitely possible. Let's see, are there any other tips I can give? It's kind of it. You kind of have to turn in a lot at the end to stop yourself so you don't like run off on this, but that's pretty much it. You can actually semi-head hitter Z knee ups. But I wouldn't really recommend it. I would just use the normal setup, which is 0.79, face 175, 3 taps, and then you can do anywhere between 3 to 5 tick. Just like force momentum this at an angle, force momentum this, and then you can either have like a jam setup here, semi-head hitter setup, or you can do 2 tick. And then force momentum this. This is island 4 to 5 transition, by the way. For this jump, if you want to set up, you can just like semi-head hitter and hold space, but of course release space on the slime because you can't jump on slimes in 1.8. That's not a thing that you can do. And then you're on to island 5. There are barriers down across this whole area, so there's nothing you can fall off unless you literally jump off the edge here. And then on this trapdoor, this is a little bit janky. But the key idea is you kind of do it like a paint up, except you want to go a little bit outward and then turn in. You want to give yourself like a lot of distance in the forward direction and then use that to like turn in onto it rather than trying to like hug this wall and then like land on it barely, you know? So this angle is like 150 and then like 1 tick semi-head hitter, 1 tick strafe, and then like turn in late so that you can like turn in into it rather than try and like barely land on it. Just do 1 tap and 2 tick here. You can also make it with head hitter apparently. So for this, do 77, 1 unshift tap, and you can force momentum. You can get max force momentum, 2 tick force momentum, 3 tick force momentum. So it's fairly lenient. For this jump's kind of, it looks really hard. I have a few different ways you can do this. The first way is if you go to this corner and face 64, you can fit 6 tick because you're running at an angle and you're strafe 1 tick after jumping. And you want to do kind of smooth turn. If you turn too fast, you can still hit the pane, but as long as you do like a slow smooth, or even start turning 2 ticks after jumping if you really want to. Then you can make this by quite a bit. You can even just like turn like a little bit and then you won't hit the pane. Another strategy you can use if you want to is these coordinates, where it's going to be similar, except now you have to jump with WA, so it's a 0 tick strafe instead of a 1 tick strafe. These coordinates are just on the edge. It's 0.5x, and then you're going to face 71. So it's the same thing, except now you're jumping with WA instead of strafing 1 tick after. Then for this next ladder, to ladder around pane, you have a few different angles you can use depending on how you want to strafe it or turn it. So you can either go from the front or you can go from the back depending on whether you want 1 or 2 tick. We'll start with, if you go from the back, face 59, you can get 2 tick with a 1 tick strafe. I kind of like 1 tick strafe just because you can get a lot of distance really quickly. It kind of handles the turn for you and it's fairly easy, but you might not like how consecutive the inputs are with 1 tick strafe, especially with 2 tick before that. It can be kind of difficult. So you could also try 54 from the back, and with that you're gonna have to do a little bit of a later strafe, but it's the same general idea. Just kind of mess around with the angle a bit if you like some strafe timings more than others, and then you can do the same angles like 59 from the front, except now you're gonna do head hitter, of course, or 54, same thing. And you could even go as low as like 50 if you want like a super late turn, but I don't see many people who like to do that. It's just a possibility. It's kind of easy to hit the pane if you're not being careful with an angle as inward as that, but it's definitely an option. For this, there are a few ways to like avoid the forced ticks. Some of them I wouldn't recommend bothering with. If you're feeling lazy, you can just like head hitter all of these iron bar neos. I can't even get in the ceiling, by the way. You can just head hitter all of these if you want, and you know that's perfectly fine. If you want to avoid some of the ticks, one thing you can do is face 10 out, 1 unshift tap with A, and then no sprint Presky. I would just head hitter this one, and then same thing here. And then I think you can even do it with this one, but it's just kind of janky. Actually, now that I think about it, you can probably do, let's see, what would the angle be? If you're doing 170, then you'd have to flip it to like 80, and then 1. So you can do this if you want, where you max Presky with A and hold space, and it's, I don't know, it's just kind of weird, but it does technically avoid the tick. Another thing you can do is you can do 3 shift taps here, and then you can kind of like land on this and skip 1. But anyway, those are all just like, I wouldn't really worry about it too much since it's kind of like the start of the section. It's not too important. Oh, I actually have a quicker setup for these. I just realized I wrote that down. If you go to these corners and face 81, you can no sprint jam these. So that's just like a faster way to set up for this specific jump is face 81, no sprint jam, and then hold space. For the slab to ladder, you're going to do 0.1, face 168, and do 2 shift taps. Because you're at an angle, you can fit 2 taps here, and then it's just going to go straight to the ladder. It's fairly lenient force momentum timing. For this, you can semi-head hitter from the front, or I guess you can't semi-head hitter. You can jam / head hitter, or you can go to the front and then do, if I can go to the front, oh my gosh. Then you can do run back. For this ladder to block, I do have a semi-header no strafe. So you can do 0.1 on the right edge, face negative 154. And then it's semi-headed or no turn, no strafe, but you have to like, I would re-jump and like turn the failsafe basically. And then for getting to the carpet, face 123.5, and then it's 5 tick or 6 tick, both work here. This, I have a couple different strategies depending on what you're comfortable with. One of them is completely no turn, no strafe. You do 0.4, face 56. It's a 6 tick. That's forced 6 ticks. That means if you get 5 tick, then you're gonna like fall and then you can catch yourself like down here. But it is completely no turn, no strafe, so it's the only thing you have to worry about. But if you don't like the tick, then you can also do another strategy, whereas if you go to this back corner, face 80.5 and do 1 shift tap, you can force momentum and then 0 tick strafe, which is when you strafe on jump, and that's completely no turn. But you could also probably try and do some like turn if you want to. It's just kind of janky with like some one tick strafe, depending on what you want to do there. For this, because this is kind of weird, I might just do one unshift tap and run this, but you can also hit your head on the fence instead of accidentally jumping out of this. Go here. And then for this final jump to ladder, face 160, do one unshift tap with S, and then you do one tick or two tick, and then you just shift on the ladder. So that was Island 5. Now this is the Island 5 to 6 transition. This is fairly easy, so it shouldn't be too complicated. You can just force momentum this. It's pretty lenient. I would recommend going around the right side for this because it's Z facing. You can also do something like this, where this is some highly multi-tick timing from right here, some random position there. You could also do some, if you want something else that's completely no turn, you could run off this and then re-tap on both and just make sure you strafe late. Force momentum this, and then you want to make sure that this is multi-tick, so something like this is 5 or 6 ticks, so that's probably fine. You can also force momentum at an angle and then like turn in afterward if you want to. And then this is Island 6. There are barriers all down there, so you don't have to worry about falling off. I'd go to the back right corner, one shift tap A, 6 tick while running it. You can also go to the front and head hitter, facing like 27, seems good. For this slime, I would probably 6 tick it and then like jump with WA is pretty nice because that takes care of most of the turn for you. But you could also do some like pre-turn and one tick strafe is another possibility. For this ladder to ladder, you have a couple ways you can do this. I do have another like OJ or no turn strat if you really want it. So if you do 0.3, face 75, you can do max paint up from A, which remember that's max Presky with A, and then walk one tick A, and then you jump with WD, so it's Woodwa again. And then you would probably chain this just to avoid the tick from the ladder to the cobble wall. Because if you get stuck here, there's no way to multi-tick this. You just have to either do forced 2 tick or you have to do forced 1 tick, depending on what you prefer. But of course, you can do this the normal way. If you do one shift tap back facing like 75, you can A7 head hitter. And of course, there's a 3-block ceiling, so your timings are going to feel a little bit different here. Or you can go to the back, face like 77, 76, and head hitter with an early strafe. So just your normal ways of doing that. And then of course, this is a forced tick. You can either head hitter from the front, or you can face 76, 77-ish, and 2 tick. Head over here. For this slab to ladder, I have a Presky strat, so you can avoid doing any head hitter. If you just go from the corner, 51 in Presky, then you have to do a late strafe to avoid like hitting the ladder. If you get like 2 tick Presky and get like a 1 tick strafe, you can hit it if you like turn early. So just do a late strafe, late turn, just to avoid anything like that. But it does avoid the tick. Of course, though, you can just head hitter this, or you could find something that gets a little bit more speed that is a forced tick if you prefer that instead. And then there are not barriers here, so don't fall down that. Now we're on to probably one of the most infamous jumps. For this, you face 143 semi-head hitter for X facing. This is one of the most infamous jumps because it's just kind of annoying. It feels like you have to sprint head hitter out of this, and it's like hard to control your speed. And also people all the time fall down here to like the start of the map. It's very, very common actually. So that's probably the most important thing here is to make sure you don't fall down there. Like it doesn't matter if you fail to jump. What matters is if you fail to jump and then keep falling. So that should be your probably biggest priority. In terms of strategies, I have a few good ones you can try for this. First is obviously sprint head hitter. For the angle, I would recommend 55 because and you want to strafe 1 tick after jumping, and that kind of like burns all of your speed really quickly. If you turn 1 tick after jumping and strafe 1 tick after jumping, you can like entirely stop all of that excess speed that you have. So that's why I'd recommend that angle. But the alternate strategy is pretty interesting actually, and I'd recommend this instead, is if you 0.27x on this edge and face 67. Then you can no sprint, 5 tick timing, and you're gonna no sprint the whole way. Although you can like start sprinting afterward if you want, but just kind of like annoying because you have to sprint and then shift immediately after. So I wouldn't really recommend doing this sprinting like force momentum. So it's a 5 tick with W without sprinting, then strafe as soon as you can after jumping, and then just shift whenever. And then the next thing about this is also that I feel like it's really hard to fall off. I guess one thing is if you get 4 tick, you can like have something like, you can get kind of stuck on the ladder. So that is one thing to worry about, is make sure that you don't fall off still. It's still possible. And then an interesting thing about the fact that this is no sprint is that means that you can basically rotate it any which way and it still works. So you can face -23 here and then do the same thing but with D. And it's actually completely no turn if you do it like this. So if you are really, really afraid of getting the turn wrong and you are like the input god, you can do it like that. And the advantage of doing it like this as well is that you can turn on toggle sprint because you're not holding W originally. So it's kind of doing the force momentum thing I was talking about earlier, but like automatically. So that's a nice thing about doing it with D, is that you can have toggle sprint on. You jump over here, just face slightly rightward, and then you're on to the second half of Island 6, because this is still considered the same island. This hopper to ladder jump, you can kind of just wing this if you want. It's not really, it's kind of early on, it's kind of inconsistent, but it's not too important. But if you want a strategy, I have a couple you can use. 0.82 face 15 on the back of this hopper. 1 unshift tap forward, 1 shift tap back, and force momentum with pre-turn. And for this, you don't have like a lot of room to pre-turn. You want to pre-turn like 2 to 3 ticks, maybe just 2 ticks before jumping. And you don't want to pre-turn out too far. You want to kind of make sure that you're like barely passing the ladder so that you're not going so far out that you can't like grab the ladder anymore. Then another strategy you can use is kind of similar, except it's a more inward angle. If you do 0.9 face 10 and do 2 shift taps, then it's basically the same thing, except now you're going to pre-turn earlier. And if you want to go all out, you can even do 3 shift taps here, which will technically overjump, but not if you pre-turn. It's not working. Well, anyway, you can do 2 taps and you can pre-turn. This is just like an earlier pre-turn version of the same strategy. So you have the face 15 strategy and the face 10 strategy, and the face 10 one allows you to pre-turn earlier than face 15. For this jump, you can do like a forced 5 tick if you want. It's not really all that great, but you do the same setup where you do 0.79 face -175, 3 shift taps, and then 5 tick. And then I don't think you can make it with 4 tick, but you can also avoid the tick by going from the cobble wall. The idea is if you go from this corner, face -142, and do 1 shift tap, you can jam and then just hold space. You don't even have to strafe if you want. I like to like strafe after jumping. You can also strafe on jump. It's just kind of tricky doing it like that, but it's overall pretty lenient. For this, you can basically go from wherever you want. It doesn't really matter. Probably go from the slab just so you can get some extra height. It's not too difficult. This double knee up is pretty difficult because you have to do a pre-turn in order to get enough distance, or at least like a really sharp jump angle. There are a couple different angles you can use. You can do anywhere between 18 to 18.7. 18.7 is better than 18 because you can get even more of a pre-turn though. Because like you have more leniency on the pre-turn. You have to get the pre-turn anyway, so you may as well get one that's more lenient. So what this is going to look like is you go to the corner, face 18.7 head hitter, and then you have to turn slightly before landing. And then you have to be really careful to not like hug the wall, because if you hug the wall, you start losing your sprint, and thus you lose distance. So you really have to like straighten yourself out, and then you want that to get you all the way to the block. Like I need to be able to just do this and then automatically land on the block without even strafing or anything. And then the only reason I would strafe is so I can stop myself at the end. That's the general idea. And then if you want something even more optimized, you can also scoot forward to Z.03. That'll give you an extra 0.02 distance, which may not sound like a lot, but when you're talking about like a pre-turn like this, it can actually be pretty significant in terms of how much extra distance it gives you. And then if you want to, you can also do face 18 instead of 18.7 with the same 0.03. And with that, you have less room to pre-turn. It's kind of like a jump angle thing, though it's still, you still have to do a little bit of pre-turn regardless, but it's just like a different version of the same thing. Maybe you prefer that kind of turn instead. For this, go to the front, and then you're not going to jump at all. You're just going to run off. You want to face -47 from the back left corner. Run off with W, and then strafe like 1 to 2 ticks afterward. And then don't turn too early like I was just doing and hit the ladder. But it's overall not too precise. Face 45, semi-head hitter for Z-facing paint up. Jump up here. For this, there's actually a way to skip all of the forced ticks here, which is pretty cool. You're going to go to the back of this ladder, scoot rightward to X.35, and then the angle is -145.3. And you do force momentum while holding space. Hold on a second. Force momentum while holding space, and it will go all the way to the end. For some reason, 2-tick force momentum is not working, but yeah, there you go. So if you get the right angle, then both 1-tick force momentum and 2-tick force momentum, you can hold space, and it'll go all the way to the yellow clay, and you would just strafe at the end to stop yourself. So you don't have to do any forced ticks there if you don't use that strategy. Blip up, blip up, blip up. Just, you have like a few different ways you can do blip ups. One that I prefer to do is if you go to like the edge of the carpet, so that's 0.299, make sure it says Y 0.0625, and then you would do something called jam back, which is essentially where you jam with S, and then you sprint forward with W after a few ticks. With my specific input, I jump back with S for 2 ticks, wait for 2 ticks, and then sprint forward. But there are a few different variants of jam back where you like don't hold, or you hold for longer. I don't know too much about them, but that's my specific input. You can also, if you go to the front here, do 1 shift tap with S, and then you can do a run back, which is when you jump with S, and then you're going to sprint with W the next tick. So that's a few different options for that. Then overall, if you mess up, of course, just grab the ladder for fail-safing. You don't want to like fall off or anything. Just force momentum this. You can do an extra tap to make sure you're safe. And then you can force momentum this. Although, since it's at an angle, if you want to be safe, you can scoot forward a bit more to give yourself extra distance. For this, go on this side. This is the Z-facing side. This is the X-facing side. Sometimes people get that mixed up, and you will get some mistakes happening if you accidentally go on the wrong side. In terms of coordinates, I'm going to go on this edge, 0.17. Sorry, it's up here. 0.17. Face, -56. And you can do anywhere between 2 to 4 tick. The important part about this is that you don't hit this wall. So in pursuit of that, you would probably want to do a late strafe and probably a late turn. Just because the distance of this jump is actually really short. Like, I mean, you can make it with just like jam, you know, you can make it with semi-head hitter, but of course, that's not going to give you the most possible distance. You would prefer something that's running a bit like this. Because that can give you a little bit more distance. So just be mindful. Try to get some of the later tick timings. You would obviously prefer 4 tick over 2 tick. And then don't hit the wall. And then if you're feeling really lazy, you can also just do like some force momentum or something like that. Force momentum this. For your X and Eos, remember that you can line up with like as if there was a back wall behind you. So in this case, it would be X.7. And then that lets you semi-head it or lets you jam or A7 or you can also head hitter as well. You can land on the ladder or you can grab it. Doesn't matter. You can do it on the other side. Who cares? All of these things are reasonable. For this X-Scout Neo, make sure that you're on like the true corner. You want it to be 0.700, 0.70, or especially the Z-axis, because that's the one where that's the left and right direction, where if it's like slightly off, you might hit the wall, and then you can just semi-head hitter this. You don't really want to strafe this. It's basically just a 3-block jump at this point when you do it like this, except you have to deal with a slight turn and a little micro turn. But you could also probably find like a force momentum. The thing I wouldn't like about force momentum here though is that if you have bad coordinates, it's really easy for like different force momentum timings to hit it, but some to not. Let's see. So you see that 2-tick force momentum passes, but 3-tick and 4-tick don't. So that's kind of janky, which is why I don't really recommend force momentum there. Just one tap this, force momentum. Same thing here. And then you're on to Island 7, where there's some barriers down here. You have to do like a little bit of fence ups and then just do this like 5-tick. And then you're actually up here onto the like upper part of Island 7. Once you're on this upper island, there are a bunch of barriers down here, so there's no way to fall through really. The main thing is that there's this like semi-LOD jump that you have to do to this ladder. I've seen tons of people fail this jump just because they're not being careful. I would probably recommend going from the stone block. I know this is kind of like a really tiny thing, but because people fail it so often, you kind of want to pay attention to something like this. You could jam it if you want, just to be safe. You only have to do it a few times anyway. You may as well take the extra time to be safe. That's at least how I think about it. Jump in, right click at the same time. Do 3 unshift taps for your diagonal momentums as always, except to actually get force momentum instead of doing that weird pesky thing I just did. Semi-head hitter this. You can use the same strategy for this jump that we used on, I forget what island it was on, but 47, and you run off. Don't jump it. For this, I would just head hitter this, honestly. Like, technically, you can fit some sort of pesky on this, I believe. It's a face negative 55, and then you can sprint pesky this, and it's just kind of weird, but you can make it work. But I would recommend just head hittering it just because it's not really worth spending that extra time setting up something that you barely have to do anyway. This jump is kind of annoying because if you get unlucky, you can see that you can void the tier entirely, and then you don't even fit in at all. The way you want to avoid that is you want to go from like underneath, rather than bouncing from the top and going in. You want to go in as you're going up, and you were trying to get like a low bounce. The reason that's helpful is because the way that you avoid this is when you go too high and entirely miss the gap, something like that. So you want to try and go kind of low and get in while you're going up. It's kind of like a small thing, but it can kind of help with getting into the gap properly. For this, face 10 out, which is negative 170, 1 unshift tap with A, and then sprint pesky, and then you can just strafe in. There are some strategies where you chain from here and try to get momentum onto this pane, but I wouldn't recommend them because there are some good strategies I found for this jump by itself where you don't chain it. So that's why I wouldn't recommend chaining it. In terms of the strategy, I would do 0.8 face 150. 0.8 face 150. And you're going to 4-tick, strafing 1-tick or 2-tick after jumping. And both of them are no turn. But I would still turn in late just for like safety purposes. So you have to do the forced tick, but then you can strafe 1 or 2 ticks after jumping. So then that's kind of lenient. And they're both no turn if you just want to land on top of it and then like jump back with S. Remember, whenever you're dealing with this, don't do max force momentum because you can over jump. For some reason, it's not over jump. There you go. You can over jump. So make sure you're being careful when you're doing this jump that you don't do max force momentum or whatever and then like fall off. Seems like it does work if you're at a slight angle, but that's one thing to worry about. This jump is very scary. And don't do something like this where you shift off. That's came up earlier. You don't want to shift off one of these ledges because even though you're holding shift, it can still fall off, and that's not going to be TP backable if you submit like a request for a TP back. So what I would do is I would approach, you want to be on the corner of this, but I wouldn't approach it from this side because that's how you fall off. I would approach it from this side, and then you want to get to X point 8. And now I'm on the corner, but I didn't have to do it the unsafe way where I came from that side and like hoping that I don't hold W for too long. And then from here you can semi-head hitter. It is a 3-block ceiling, so it is, your timing is going to be a little bit different than otherwise. If you want to, you can also go from like the back and get like anywhere between 2 and 3 tick. I guess 1 to 3 tick works. I wouldn't do taps here just because we don't really want extra speed. We just want it to be multi-tick. And since you're getting extra speed, you would rather, you're going to get too much speed basically, which is why you wouldn't really want to do taps. So you can go from the back and you can do 1 to 3 tick as well. And for this, one unshift tap and force momentum, go in the water, and then this is not too hard. You can't go up this side because water is weird, but you can go up here. Here's another jump that's kind of infamous. It used to be that the strategy was like do like a 5 tick like that, but there are no turns with, thanks to modern strategies that are make it a lot easier. So what you do is you go to the corner, face -70, 2 unshift taps with A, 1 shift tap with S, and then you're gonna walk with A and then jam with W like this. So that's how much of a walk is that? I think it's like a 5 tick walk, something like that. 5 ticks walk with A and then jump with W, and it's no turn, no strafe. Or I guess it is kind of strafe, but it's, anyway, it's no turn. I would probably just head hitter this, but I think you can, if you line up with the back wall, which is X.3, you can fit semi head hitter here. It's just kind of a precise shift timing. You can do this Cairo ladder normally, like if you face like, 8 out or whatever, semi head hitter, 1 tick strafe, but you can also land on top of the ladder. Not quite sure what the angle is, maybe 40, maybe it's 37. Yeah, 37 seems good. If you semi head hitter from the back right of the ladder with sprint, then you can land and then retap, and that's just a no turn all the way. This pain to pain Tyrone is a little tricky. If you know pain force momentum, this would be a good time to use it, just because it can give you the little bit of extra speed that can make this not very precise, facing like -23 and pain force momentum with a late strafe. But otherwise, you can also do 0.7 on this edge, facing -25 and 4 tick, and then that's a no turn, no strafe. Although I would probably strafe at the end and turn it at the end, just so that you don't run off on this edge, because that is fairly easy to do if you're not being careful. Don't swim into the web, because you're going to be stuck in that for like 5 minutes, and that's going to be annoying. If you want, you can go straight to this block just with 1 tap and force momentum, but you can also go here and then 1 tap in Presky and get 1 to 2 tick Presky, so it's fairly lenient. And then Presky onto here, and then I'll do 1 unshift tap and force momentum onto here. You can climb up this, but I wouldn't recommend it, because you can actually do the skip, where instead of jumping from this slab and going around the panes, you can just go straight from this cyan. And I think it's actually easier than the intended way. So it's kind of a skip, but it's also just like a lot easier than the intended way. It's not a hard skip. But if you were to go the intended way, just 6 tick each of these from the back. It's fairly lenient. Probably do 1 tap like this, something like that. And then probably 3 taps, 1 shift tap and force momentum. And then it's fairly lenient. If you get stuck in the web, then of course you can fail safe to these ladders though. Cool, and then this is the transition from island 7 to 8. So for this, you're just gonna face whatever you want basically from the corner here, something outward, force momentum. It's fairly lenient, just keep an eye on where you're landing, because you could like overshoot if you're not being careful. And then for this, I believe there's probably a semi head hitter. You can do it from like right here if you want to, or you can run just from the fence. Either way, it's not too precise. And then you're onto this lower half of island 8, and then there's like a transition, then you're on the top half. What's notable is that this island, there's like a duplicate of it, but like across this portal, and it's like flipped 180 degrees. So it's the same island, except everything's like flipped. So you're gonna have to do everything you're about to do twice, but I'll go through it twice just because the strategies are like a little bit different in each of them, just in case you need it. The like standard strategy for this 4+1 is to do 1 shift tap, and then you can 2-tick and spam. You have to jump a total of 4 times, and you have to do like the optimal spam timing, or you won't make it. But I found that kind of hard when I was playing this. So another alternate strategy is if you go from center of this block, which is x.5, face -8, do 1 unshift tap, and then you jam and jump 3 more times. And the nice part about this is that it avoids the 2-tick, and it also means that in the spam you're only doing 3 jumps instead of putting all 4 at once. You're kind of like delaying, you're putting 1 like well before, and then you're delaying the rest of them, so it's kind of easier to time. So that's what makes that easier. I'll probably just head hitter this from the back. It's not too complicated. Then you have this little transition. I don't think this has a name, but it's just kind of part of Island 8. Maybe you could consider this part of the transition from Island 7 to 8, because it's still like, you haven't really surfaced yet, I guess. For this, you can semi-head hitter from here and go straight to the ladder if you want to. And then that kind of skips some of these shenanigans. Otherwise, you can semi-head hitter to the pane, and then you can run off, or you can jump off. I would probably jump off just because running off is a little bit tight. If you're not careful, you might mess that up. But 6-tick, 5 to 6-tick this from the back, and then you're at the same place regardless of which one you went to. Then from this front right corner, instead of jumping, I would run off. You can either run off or you can walk off, depending on, I mean, just whichever one you prefer. Don't like strafe early and like I can't even do it with this angle. Okay, maybe do this angle, like 167-ish, and you can kind of prevent the issue entirely. I was saying if you accidentally strafe early and like get stuck on the ladder, but as long as you're facing out enough, it's not really much of an issue. So that's the general idea there. Gonna climb up these stairs, and then you're on to like the building part of it. Again, for paint ups, you face 45. It is notable here that this is technically a harder version of a paint up, because this is like the short pane side of the iron bar, and this is like the long one, so it's kind of farther away, kind of. But it doesn't really matter all that much. It's still the same strategy. This jump is also pretty notable, because it's kind of stupid. In terms of strategy you're going to use for this, I have a few different ones depending on whether you want to do like a turn or a no turn, but the inputs are all kind of annoying. Go to 0.9 on X, face 45.5, and then you're going to 4-tick, and you're going to pre-turn, kind of like on the double kneel on I7. And then you can either jump with WA or you can jump with W, depending on what you want to do. So you're going to have to turn in the middle of your run, basically, which is kind of hard because you have to get like a ton of distance. The nice thing about this is that it is a really simple input, but you can't, the turn is also just kind of stupid. So it's not very consistent in my opinion, but that is like the simple strategy. And then there are some side steps. So I hope you are comfortable with sidestep, but if not, you can probably learn it at this point. So face 1 degree from the corner, run with WD for 4 ticks, and then you have to do WAD sidestep, and it's no turn. What that means is you jump with W or WA and D at the same time. Either way, it's the same thing. But typically people jump with WA and D at the same time for these, just because it's easier to transition to the next part of the input, which is 1 tick after you jump. You want to be jumping with you want to be sprinting in the air with WA. So it's completely no turn, but it is kind of a complicated input if you've not had experience with sidestep before. There is another version of this though, which is kind of similar, but instead it's Woodwa sidestep, which is like the other common one. So if you do 0.67 on Z, and then face 5, you have the same thing, except now it's Woodwa sidestep. So you're going to run 4 ticks with WD, and then instantly jump with WA. You don't have that transition tick where you're jumping with W instead, and that's also no turn. So that's like your 3 different ways that you can do that. For this, you can use like your normal Cairo ladder strategy, face like 8 out, 5 out, whatever it is you want to do, and do that. I think there's also a way to land on top of the ladder that I found in XIII. I don't really have the chords for that on hand. Oh, actually I do. Point to 51.7. And then sprint jam. And then you can land on top of the ladder. Look at that. Brilliant. So that's nice because then you can avoid any tricky turns there entirely. Semi-headed over here. For this, face slightly leftward, do 2 shift taps and then run it. Because if you remember, a fence is a 5-tick setup. And so this is 2 pixels bigger, so you want to do 2 shift taps to account for those 2 extra pixels. Kind of shift to the front here. Face a good amount out, just because this note block is X facing. And then you go strafe like a few ticks after jumping. And then you can just semi-head it or this, because although it's a double neo, it's down like 2 blocks, so it's not even really all that precise. If you want, you can jump to this iron bar, but it doesn't matter because you just have paint ups. For paint ups, face 143 for X facing. And then on this side, I guess it's also 143 on this side, it's just the negative. 3 taps and 3 tick that. It's going to be a 4 tick regardless. You can also head hitter this, or you can use the setup I mentioned, which is 0.79, face negative 175, 3 shift taps, and then run it, which is going to be 3 to 5 tick, so that's multi-tick. From the back here, face slightly left, and then run it, not too precise. Same thing for this slab. There is a barrier here. Don't get freaked out by that, I guess. And then I would honestly just head hitter this. The one disadvantage with head hitter is that because it's 3 block ceiling and it's +1, that means that this is 2 tiers higher than it normally is. So you might prefer to do that same setup just to get extra distance. It might hit the ladder, honestly. I haven't checked. Yeah, it does hit the ladder, because you might scoot a bit leftward and try and find just like a run setup so that you can get a little bit more distance so it's not too precise of shift timing. And after that, now you're on the transition from island 8 to 9. If you remember, 9 is the duplicate version of this island, except it's flipped around. I think there are barriers here that are relevant. Oh, it's over there. Now for this, you can go onto this trapdoor, or you can also scoot onto here just by holding shift in space. I would hold shift when you're going up any of these rather than like sprint and W, because I've seen people like jump off like that because it's surprising when you finally get up there. But yeah, that's just an alternate strategy. Force momentum to this one. In terms of strategy for these waters, make sure you're starting back far enough. A common setup is like 0.0. It lines up pretty well, or like a little bit behind 0.0, and then that'll give you a ton of speed. But you want to make sure that you're exiting out like the top of the water. That's like the most important part. And then for this, you want to shift kind of forward. You want to face a good bit out so you can get like a 1-tick strafe. Do I have an angle I've written down for this? No, I don't. Okay, great. So 130 might be good. Maybe like 0.3 face 130 and you get like a 1-tick strafe. Issue with that is you can hit it. So maybe 135 from 0.3. Yeah, that seems good. Like 0.3 and face 135. Nice thing about this side also is that from this side, it feels like you're closer to the edge. I think it's still like fully fail-safe, but it's kind of scarier to be looking at the void than it is to be looking at like flat ground below you. There's a barrier here. Just take note of that. Just semi-head hitter this to this block. And then for this slime, or this isn't the slime I have strat for yet. For this, let's see, can you slow force? Maybe you can semi-head hitter. Yeah, you can just semi-head hitter from the front for this one. It's not too precise. And then here's the slime I have strategy for. So for the pain neo, just semi-head hitter with no sprint, or you can go from the back. Just keep in mind that if you're going from the back and you normally do it like this, that now you have a ladder, so your position might be a little bit different than what you're used to. And if you want to account for that, you could do 2 taps forward. For this big slime, which gets you to the lower part of Island 9, you want to face 177 and then semi-head hitter from the back right corner. And that'll just get you all the way, no turn, no strafe, so it's pretty lenient. And I think you can also get like several different timings and it still makes it. But you can like overjump this last one if you got like 9-tick Pesky, for example, so you just want to be careful there. So now we have the duplicate of the island, except this one is flipped and also more things are invisible. So the rotated version, you can still do 1 shift tap and then 2-tick here, because this, remember, this is the 4+1 that was on the original version of the island, except now it's flipped. So you do 1 shift tap and then spam with 2 tick, or you can do the same strategy as before except flipped, which is 0.5 face 8, 1 unshift tap. That was the wrong button I just pressed. 1 unshift, 0.5, 1 unshift tap. There you go. And then jam and triple jam when you land. And again, that's nice because then you don't have to do 4 jumps in a row. Just head to that. And then this is still the same. You can still semi-head hitter this. One thing I didn't mention on the other island is I think if you're not careful, you could have coordinates where like jam works, but like A7 doesn't. So just make sure that both timings work if you're doing this skip. I would recommend this skip. One thing that is kind of worrying about the skip though is that because like the fence is 0.5 lower than it appears, just be careful that you're timing it appropriately, that you're reacting to the right part of the fence and not like trying to react as if it was like a half slab lower than it actually is. But otherwise you can like jump here. Again, I'll probably jump off this instead of running off this. And then find like a 5 to 6 tick for this. Something like this is good. You can even make it a 4 tick. And then again, from the front left, you can face about like 165 and run off. And just like grab the ladder. Don't jump, obviously. So now we have the duplicate version of the island. So I'll just run through all the strategies again, but this time it's kind of reversed. 3 taps, run that. Again, you first have the pre-turn version of the strategy. So for that, you would do 0.1 face negative 45.5 this time. And then you'd 4 tick with the pre-turn outward, which is still kind of jank. It's not all that nice compared to doing a no turn, like the sidestep strategy. So the sidestep strategy, you can do face -1, 4 tick WA, and then WAD sidestep, where you jump with W, and then straight WD 1 tick afterwards. So that's no turn. Or you can do the Woodwa version, where you do scoot forward to 0.67, face -5, and then you do the same thing, except now you're going to do Woodwa sidestep, where you jump instantly with WD instead of with the W. And then again, you have the same no turn strategy for the XIII ladder. So that's going to be 0.2, face 51.7, sprint jam, and then you can land on top of the ladder and like jump again to stop yourself. 2 shift taps, run it just like the other side. Same thing to your semi-head hitter from the front, except now it's on the other side. And again, the double neo is not very precise, just semi-head hitter it. 143 for X facing paint-ups, and then there's barriers here because this is where the blocks were on the other side. I might swap to the other side. 0.79, 175, 3 shift taps, 3 to 5 tick. Same thing. Just kind of running through this, and then there's this block you step onto. Remember, you could head hitter this before, but it's easier if you have some sort of, I don't really have chords for this, but you have some sort of 5 tick chords where it's a little bit easier to grab the ladder, maybe something a little bit further forward. There you go. Where you have just like an extra tick of leniency. You can copy this if you want, 0.99, 0.09, to 16.8. Just so it's a little bit easier to grab the ladder. And now finally the differences appear actually in a little bit, not quite yet. Again, you can shift plus space onto this. There is a barrier here, don't miss something because of that. Again, with these waters, go a little bit behind 0.0 and then kind of jam into it. I kind of did that one poorly, but you would want to like start a bit low and then like jam like that. Okay, there's barriers here, of course. But nothing too difficult. You can go on the left side of it because it's a little bit above. I kind of prefer right side just in general, so that it doesn't really matter that there's not really space down here because it's like basically impossible to fall off this. So you can still use like 0.7 face -45 here in semi-head hitter with like an early strafe. Same as before, except it's on the other side. There's a barrier here. And then For this, you're going to shift basically, you can shift pretty far forward, I think, something like this, and then just do like a late strafe. You don't want to hit the pane like that. So if you are worried about that, you could face out a bit more. It's fairly imprecise. Basically, any coordinates are good here. For this, you can stop on this one and do like 3 taps and then 3 to 4 tick. It's multi-tick. Or you can semi-head hitter from the front of this, and that even lets you chain all the way over here if you want to, or otherwise you can do 3 taps and multi-tick that. Normal strategies for these panios. And then for backward, you want to do 2 shift taps and then run it for the pane backward. And then of course for these panios, you could have also done the sprint strategy if you prefer that instead, and then do 2 taps here. Cool. And now you're on to probably the hardest transition / life or death section on the map. So this is like, it's pretty brutal because from this point on, the life or death sections are actually difficult, whereas for the rest of the map, except for maybe island 3 to 4, it was pretty easy, but now it's kind of difficult. I don't know if I have a setup for this first jump, it's just kind of like a force momentum, I guess. It's not too difficult here. Make sure you scoot back for this, go to XIII because that lines up with the back wall and that lets you semi-head hitter. And then for this, just line up at the back of 1 block of momentum, so that'll be 0.3, and then I'll do a shift tap, and go to the ladder. So for these first few jumps, it's really not that difficult. It's for these upcoming jumps that are a little harder. For this setup, face straight, maybe scoot a bit leftward for safety, and then do an unshift tap with W. And then you can do basically anywhere between 1 to 4 tick force momentum because it's just a 4 block jump. It's not too difficult. I would semi-head hitter this, but if you're worried, you could also face a little bit leftward, 1 shift tap and force momentum. Force momentum this, just be careful not to over jump because this is only a 2 block jump basically. You can probably even semi-head hitter it if you want to. For Z paint ups, face 45, semi-head hitter. Now there's it's notable here that you can actually go straight to that block instead of doing the X facing paint up. If you're going to do the X facing paint up, the angle is 37. Semi-head hitter, 1 tick strafe, sharp turn, same as we've been doing this whole time. But if you want to do the skip, it is multi-tick, so I would recommend to do this instead of using the paint up. So you're going to do face -30 and do an unshift tap. Then you can do 3 tick or 4 tick, and both of them land on it, so it's multi-tick. This jump to this pane, I've seen like 4 people, actually that's the exaggeration, maybe like 3 people who have hit this cobble wall and then fallen off because it's like X facing and they're like surprised. Make sure you're jumping sufficiently around the cobble wall. It's also actually possible to go straight to this block, although I wouldn't really recommend going for that. You can like backwards momentum or whatever and you can make it. But anyway, go to the pane. This pane up is basically forced, so you're going to face -37, semi-head hitter, 1 tick strafe. Same shenanigans we've been doing this whole time with a sharp turn. Just make sure you're not getting a jump angle. Don't get 10 tick Pessy. Same things we've been talking about every time you do one of these paint ups. Long jump. I remember being particularly scared on this jump when I was at this rank, just because like if you get the wrong timing, you can be kind of cooked. So I got like a few different strategies you can use. You can obviously use like the most obvious is 2 shift taps and then 2 tick. And then as long as you're able to like react if you get the wrong time, like if I get head hitter, I need to be able to react and stop myself. And if you're unsure, then just always stop yourself because you never want to be unsure when you're attempting the jump. But of course, I found 2 tick to be really hard to visualize. Like I wouldn't react to it very well. So it is possible to head hitter this jump as well. If you go to X.8, you can head hitter, and it's basically the same thing, except I find it a lot easier to tell the difference between like head hitter and jam than 2 tick and 1 tick. And then one last option, if you're an MPK user, you can abuse your last timing label. If you do -6 tick Pessy from the back of the block, then that's another way to do this where you're keeping yourself entirely safe and you don't have to worry about reacting to anything. So that's one possibility. For this, I'll probably do like an unshift tap enforcement. I'm just test different things in practice mode. You want to land in this little crevice of the ladder so that you just climb up it automatically rather than on this side. Then for here, this looks kind of scary. It's actually really easy. All you have to do is get your Z to like 0.7, but like a little bit outside of the web, because 0.7 is the web, 0.701 is the web technically, but anyway, a little bit outside the web, like 0.69. Face straight and then jump and hit W at the top of your jump. It doesn't even have to be close to the top of the jump though. Like this is possible by so much, it really doesn't matter. The main thing is stopping yourself. Once you're past Z 0.15, stop, because at that point you're already on the pane and you don't want to like sprint off, because if you're like here and you like sprint off, you can make a dumb mistake. The worst case scenario, you react wrong and then you like fall below the pane here, but that's not a big deal because you end up down here and you can climb back up. So the safe strategy is to just stop yourself once you're sure you're above the pane, because the edge of the pane is 0.1375. So once you're at 0.15, you're already on top of the pane and you can just stop. For this, you can semi-header outward, but you can also probably land on top of the pane. Sorry, land on top of the ladder. So yeah, I can do negative 106.5. One thing is I would stop sprinting after you land on it. Like you don't want to sprint jump off by accident or something. So you would land on it and then start no sprinting at that point. But you could also just do it the normal way if you're comfortable with doing it like this. Face a bit outward so that 2-tick fits, just to be a little safer. If you want to go like crazy over prac, you can actually run off this just for even more safety. But you can also semi-head hitter, of course. And then for this, you can semi-head hitter from this front right corner, or you can go under this ceiling and Presky. And then the strategies for pane neos I've shown you before, both sprinting and no sprint. Whichever one you feel more comfortable with. And then for this last jump, you're gonna semi-head hitter from the back corner, facing 151. And then that will get you to it. You just have to be careful because of course it's a 3-block ceiling, so you have to react a bit differently to it. And then once you've done that, you've done the hardest transition, and you're onto island 10. Now from this point forward, there are still some hard transitions, but that was the hardest one, so you can take a little bit of a break at this point as you prepare for literally the hardest island on the map. Now, as I just mentioned, this island is fairly difficult, but on top of that, there are like these random holes that are scattered throughout. So you have one big one here, you have one tiny one here, and then you have this big patch over here. So in general, when you're playing this island, there are like a few notable jumps that you want to be careful that like you absolutely do not want to fall down here, because although there's like a floating island down here, you can't actually fail safe anywhere. You can't even jump to island 2 over there. You're just gonna have to restart the map if you fall. So that's your biggest priority, is absolutely do not fall in one of those holes, as I did 4 times when I played this map, which is like pretty bad, but anyway. For this first jump, you can face negative 36, head hitter, and strafe early. It's a fairly easy turn. It pretty much makes it without even turning at all. It's just kind of like a tiny turn to get yourself in the ladder hitbox a little bit more. If you want to do a little bit later strafe, though, you can face negative 40 and do the same thing, except now it's like a 3-tick strafe. I also have a 2-tick strat if you want to get a little bit more distance. It also works with head hitter. It's just a little more precise that way. Do 0.82, face negative 36. You get 2-tick. 2-tick with an early strafe is the like optimal way, but you can also, if you accidentally get head hitter, you can also still make it with like a head hitter late strafe. It's just, I can't even head hitter with that. You can also make it with head hitter and like a late strafe, so that still works. But 2-tick works pretty nicely there because you get a lot more distance than head hitter. The annoying thing about that though is that you have to take a little bit longer to set up, but overall it's kind of an easier strat. For this, you can use basically anything you want. It's not too precise. Just kind of 6-tick at an angle, something like this, where you get a late strafe. You want to be trying to take this X-facing corner a little wide so that you don't hit it. And then you're on to one of the notable jumps of the map. Again, as is typical for jumps on this map that are difficult, you have to pre-turn it because that's like a theme of some kind. It's the double knee-ups. You go to this corner, face negative 154, 1 shift tap with W, and then practice. you want to head hitter and then pre-turn, just like the double knee up on Island 7, except this one is like a fair bit more precise. As I said before, you want to make sure that you land on the landing block without doing a second turn in. Like, you can see that even without doing a second turn in or strafing in, I'm already landing on the block. That's the important part, that you don't have to have that second part where you turn in like this, because if you do that, you can lose critical distance in that process. You want to be going basically as straight as you can the whole time. The only reason you want to do a strafe at the end is to like stop yourself like that. Like, you want that to be already landed on the ground, but you're just trying to stop your momentum so that you don't run off. And that's the general idea behind that strategy. If you don't like that, as I did not like, I actually have a modern strategy. So that's the old player strategy, but I have a modern strategy that the new players can use that'll make this a lot easier. If you go to this corner, it is a hard input though. Go to this corner, the front left, face anywhere between 175.3 to 175.4. One shift tap with S, two shift taps with D, and then practice. The input is jam D, and then strafe jam WD and hold. What that means is you walk a tick with D, then jump with WD, release D a tick after jumping, and then just keep holding those inputs, including holding space. And it'll do it completely no turn. And then the main thing is that you have to stop yourself at the end. And you could jump again at the end to do that if you want to. Like that. You just need to turn around. So that's your modern strategy that should make it easier, hopefully, if you're okay with like a hard input. For this block to TD, the simple strategy, you can do head hitter from here facing 120. And then you would just no sprint, jump back to failsafe. But if you don't like forced tick, as I probably didn't, you can do 116.5 from this corner, jam holding space with sprint. And then no sprint jump back to save yourself, or sprint jump back actually is probably better here. Anyway, that just avoids the tick because it's kind of like a Presky, except you're jamming. This one you don't really need a strategy, but if you want one that's kind of optimized, you're gonna face 114, do 3 unshift taps with A, and then 1 shift tap with D. 2 to 3 tick, both of them work, and it's like generally really lenient. You want to aim for an early strafe, but even like a super late strafe with 2 ticks still can make the jump. So it's not really all that precise. You just kind of have a multi-tick strategy there to make it a little bit easier. This couple jump, don't fall down there. That's why I'll give you a few options to be a little safer with this. Face a little bit rightward. You can obviously just run this anywhere between like, you can get as late as like 4 tick, anywhere between 4 to 6 ticking to make this. If you want something else, I preferred to do like a Presky here because that gives you even more leniency on the timing. You can get basically, you know, like 7 ticks of leniency on the timing if you do like a sprint Presky there and just hold space. Right, and then this upper part starts over here. Normally for X facing you would face 37, but because this block makes you scoot a little bit farther forward than otherwise, you're gonna face 30 instead. I'm lagging a little bit, so this might take a second. So the internet's working out. So like I was saying, you just want to do like face 30 instead of 37 because you have to get around this corner a little bit better because you're scooted forward a little bit more than you usually are. But otherwise, you're just going to do this like a normal paint up with a 1 tick strafe. For this, just do 3 taps and then you can do 3 to 4 tick. There's probably no turn chords where you don't have to turn in at all, but it doesn't really matter too much. It's at the start of the section. Just semi-head hitter this. Face a bit out just so you can fit 4 tick on this, because if you go straight you can't, but if you do it at an angle then you may as well fit 4 tick, and then you can get 3 to 4 tick to this trapdoor. This is where it starts to get a little scary, because if you fail any of these then you could lose progress to like the lower part, or you could fall into the evil holes of doom down here. I actually fell in this hole one time. It was pretty devastating, so that's like, don't fall in those obviously. Angle I'd recommend for this is 32. And you're just gonna semi-head hitter to this ladder. And then I would say no strafe until maybe when you're already grabbing the ladder. The nice thing about this is that it's basically impossible to hit this corner even though it's X facing. And and the ladder hitbox extends out fairly far, so you really don't need that much distance to grab it. And it's just trying to make sure that you don't hit this wall is the most important thing. But you could have a slightly more inward angle if you want to get like a slightly later turn, maybe 34. 34 is perfectly fine as well. It just depends on your preference. This jump is particularly annoying, and it's also the most risky one, where if you were to fail it, then you could fall in the hole like I did. Simple strategies are, you could go to the back corner and you can head hitter, and then A7 you can also do. It's just the thing with A7, it's a little bit easier to hit this corner, so you might face like 36 and do like a later strafe if you're doing A7, not something more inward and hit the wall potentially. But then other than that, there's only one option I found for like a non-forced tick strategy for this that's good, and that's going to be face 22. And face 22 is notable because you can actually jam, so you can fit semi head hitter with a 1-tick strafe on here. It's just kind of tight, and it's also a forced 1-tick strafe, so if you don't get the 1-tick strafe, you're going to miss the jump. But otherwise, if you get the 1-tick strafe, the turn is pretty lenient. So this is just like kind of a complicated strategy, but it does technically avoid the forced tick if you want to do it. If you feel like kind of consistent with that, that's one option, but otherwise you kind of have to do the forced tick. Let's try the back corner here, just run this and turn in. Just note that if you run this straight, you don't actually grab the ladder because the cobble wall is outside of the hitbox, so you have to turn in a bit to actually grab, since the cobble wall is a bit larger than the ladder. For this, just line this up a bit behind 2 blocks momentum, so 0.35 on X would be good, and you can just jam it. But I know that some people also like to jam it all the way from here just for funsies. If you want to do that, you can. Just 1 shift tap and force momentum this. This one, you're gonna semi-head hitter it. Go to the corner, you can face like -70 if you want a bit of a later strafe. It's pretty lenient overall, the distance is not that hard. But of course, if you want to get like an earlier strafe, maybe you might do something like -75, honestly, would probably be good. So that's the general idea there. Just don't turn too early if you're doing -75, because you could totally like hit the wall still if you did something like that. Paint up, face 45, semi-head hitter. Now there's 2 ways to do this slime. The intended way is to go from here. Obviously, you're going to go from here to this slime. 0.6 on the back wall, face -51. And then you can either do 4-tick. If you do 4-tick, it'll slide along, or you can do 3-tick. If you do 3-tick, it'll also slide along. And the general idea for this is you don't want to shift until you get to the second ladder, and you want to start strafing with D like before you actually fall off the ladder. The reason for that is because if you start strafing after, you don't really get all that much distance. So just like a little, you want to start strafing with WD like a little bit before you fall off the ladder is the general idea behind the strategy, and it's fairly lenient. If you get 2-tick though, you're cooked, but that's the idea. But you can also go from this cauldron stuff over here, and that's not too hard. If you face 7, do 3 shift taps, then you can do 3-tick or 4-tick, and both of them will land on this cauldron over here. And then you're gonna line up at Z.0, but like a little bit to the right of it, because that'll be inside the slime. Do a shift tap forward from X.3, so that's basically 0.99, 0.25, and then you can face a little bit rightward if you want to. And then force momentum. And basically you're just gonna force momentum from here straight to the ladder. You want to pre-turn a bit on the slime, but you don't want to pre-turn so much that you like start, being about to touch this ladder. So you need to start turning a little bit late just to be safe, but it still makes back plenty even if you turn, super late. So just a few things to be mindful of, to be careful about for this. For this, it's notable that these fences look the same, but this one's easier to hit because this one's the X1 and this is the Z1 to pass through. So go to the front of the ladder, face 42, and semi-head hitter. And then you just want to start strafing with A and turning after you pass through, and it's fairly lenient. This jump from the pane to the trap door, you're gonna face -114, 3 shift taps, and then you can get 3 tick or 4 tick, and both of them will they'll hit the wall, but they'll still land on it if you just keep holding W. This pane to trap door is kind of annoying because there's multi-tick, but it's kind of annoying multi-tick, I guess. The simplest way you can do this is if you go to the corner and you head hitter, the angle for that is going to be -141. If you do that, it's going to be no turn, no strafe. So it's pretty easy as long as you get the tick, but it is a forced tick. If you want like a similar strategy, but it's multi-tick, you want to do 0.6 -133, and then do 3 shift taps with W. And then you can fit 1 tick or 2 tick. 2 tick will make it no turn just like the other one, but head hitter won't. So for head hitter, you have to do like a little turn out, or you have to strafe with A for a little bit. But it does make it like multi-tick as long as you have that like caveat that with if you get head hitter, then you have to do this slightly different input to get like slightly more distance. But that would probably be my recommended one. But you can also chain from here if you want to try and avoid any ticks, but it's kind of awkward. First way is if you go from here, face -104 and do 2 shift taps. You can max Presky and hold space, and then you can like turn, or you can also like strafe on jump. The thing that's annoying here is I find that when I do it like this, that you kind of get a lot of speed and it's easy to like fall off this trap door. And then another way you can do this is it's kind of similar, except you do -104, but except you do 1 tap and you just 6 tick, which is 1 tick shorter than the momentum. 5 tick also works, but it just it can hit the wall more often. So I would you would really want to get 6 tick if possible. But it's the same general idea as the max Presky strat, except you're just running it instead of doing a Presky. For this ladder to ladder, there's the intended way, and you can also go straight from the trapdoor to the ladder. For the intended way, you would go from here, and then my beautiful angle is 137. Run off from the back left, and then you're just going to strafe soon after running off, and it's fairly imprecise. But if you want to go from here, just depending on what you prefer, I think I would prefer the other way, but this is definitely a possibility. You can do 0.45, 137, and then do 3 shift taps. You can get anywhere between 4 to 6 tick and still make this, but of course you would like some of the later ones. You also want to turn early, but you want to strafe late. And the reason for that is that if you get 4 tick, you don't want to accidentally hit the ladder because you didn't get enough distance. So that's why you would prefer to strafe late here. So you want to aim for a late tick, but you can get as low as 4 tick and still make this and have an early turn. For this jump, go to X3.95 and just jam whatever angle you want, doesn't matter. For this jump, face -113 and then 4 shift taps with W. And then you can do basically any fast force momentum. So you can go 1 tick force momentum, you can do 4 tick force momentum, you can do 6 tick force momentum. Can't do 9 tick apparently, but anyway, you can do basically any force momentum and it'll chain to here. This jump also sucks. This jump really sucks. This jump is awful. General idea is you're gonna have to head hitter this basically no matter what you do. There are some complicated inputs, but they're kind of useless. You can do 3 shift taps back, face like barely outward, so maybe like -89. And then I like to no strafe the whole thing and just like turn all the way around to like jump backwards and stop myself, because you really need to stop yourself entirely. You can also strafe and do the same thing and just jump again when you land. So you're gonna head hitter, strafe, and jump again soon after landing. The thing about this is it's kind of input hell. It's kind of annoying. Another thing you can do is you can do a chain like this if you want. You can even jump with WD if you don't like the jump angle. But it's kind of complicated to do that. But it's just like an alternative thing if you really want to. I don't think there's like a good strategy for this jump. It's just kind of janky. Just semi-head hitter this. For this jump, I would recommend doing head hitter, like do 3 taps back and head hitter. Reason is, if you get jam, you can get on this ladder, even if you're on the other side, same thing happens, where if you get jammed, then you'll fail safe on the ladder. If you get 2-tick though, you're gonna like jump off. So try to aim between jam and head hitter, like maybe like a 40 ms timing would be good, so that it's impossible to get 2-tick, but you might get jam, and if you get jam, then you're just like fine. So jump up here, put the slab. Just line up at the back of 1 block of momentum, do 1 tap. You can either go to here, or if you don't like dealing with that wall, you can go over here. You have to go over here anyway. Shift a bit left and then do 1 tap and 2-tick. Just be careful because there's a pane here. You can't land in the center because you'll fall off. Make sure on the 0.001 of the soul sand, so it should say 0.299 on your coordinates. And then you can do the normal 2 taps back and semi-head hitter for X facing, or you can do from the corner sprint setup. Same thing, make sure on the 0.001 semi-head hitter. And then this is not too hard. For this ladder jump, you can do it like a normal ladder +2 if you want. Do like 2 taps back, face like 50, 60, probably 60 is better. And like no sprint semi-head hitter. Or you can scoot forward probably to about 0.0 where you're like aligned with this block and like do a sprint version of that. It's probably a little safer. And then for your ladder +2, that's X facing, face to -30, semi-head hitter, 1-tick strafe, no sprint. Notable that you can actually fall from here down here. I have done that before, that's why I'm mentioning that. I failed the ladder. I was 1 jump away from the transition to Island 11, and then you failed to the start of the map. It's pretty brutal, so don't let that happen to you. This is a jam setup. Force momentum this. And then semi-head hitter this. Make sure you don't hit the X facing corner. It can be pretty unforgiving if you're not careful. Still made that somehow, but anyway. For something like this, make sure you're taking advantage of this wall to slow you down. Because normally when you don't have that wall, you have to do that work manually, but because you have a wall, it can do it for you, so let it do it for you. Again, phase 60, semi-head hitter, no sprint. 1-tick strafe. For this, probably like a semi-head hitter, and just like hold from here, and it can be like pretty lenient, but you can also probably just like 2-tick it, even though it's kind of far backwards, so you're kind of losing some momentum there, but because it's such a lenient jump, it doesn't matter too much. Let's just do 1 shift tap and 2-tick. There is a barrier here, in case you were curious. There's a barrier there. If that makes you happy, you can have a barrier there. Force momentum this. This transition is also somewhat difficult, but it's not as hard as Island 9 to 10, but it is, like, compared to the rest of the map, pretty difficult. I'll do like 2 shift taps back here, and then semi-head hitter from here, facing, you know, whatever works. Just make sure that A7 works and that you're not going to over jump the last line. That's the one that you can accidentally get too much distance on. I also failed this jump because it can be surprisingly precise if you're not careful. If you get like a Pessy or something and then like trying to run it instead, being lazy, it doesn't look precise, but I've seen other people fail it as well. Scoot forward to Z.3, so you're on the corner of the momentum, face 45, 3 unshift taps, and then you can force momentum. The one thing that's a little scary about doing it like this though is that you're kind of relying on X and Z facing stuff to hopefully go on this side of the fence. Like, what if your angle is like slightly too far left, and such that for only 1 force momentum like that, some of them you go rightward and some of them you go leftward. So what I would do is I would probably face like 46 just for extra safety to make sure and like really enforce that no matter what force momentum timing you get, you're going to go on the right side of the fence. For this, if you really want to, you can 6-tick this. I've seen people who are... actually, can you 6-tick that? Yeah, I guess you can 6-tick that. Some people who really want to 6-tick that, but then they fail it, and it's like, it's pointless. You have momentum here, so you can semi-head hitter from the front of this. Otherwise, I believe it's 3 taps. Let's see, double combo. 1 unshift tap, sorry. If you do 1 unshift tap, then you can do 2-tick or 3-tick. And then I'm sure that there are some coordinates where like head hitter or 2-tick work as well. So that would probably be like 0.5x. Yeah, 0.5x. You can get head hitter or 2-tick. So any multi-tick is good there. Jam this. But of course, this one's a fake out where you have to stop on the last ice. It's kind of scary. Just you can actually stop fairly early because you make that last ice by such a significant amount that you can slow down super early and still be fine. Just make sure, of course, you don't go so early that you literally don't even make it. But you can semi-head into this, or you can force momentum. Just remember, because like the ice doesn't affect you on the edges. Let's face slightly leftward. Do that. There's a barrier there. Oh, okay. For this phase, -95, so that's 5 inward, and then you can do 5 to 6 tick. You can probably also do 4 tick, and it'll land on the fence. Just make sure you don't run off. You can do this a few ways. I'll probably go this way because this is going to be the easiest way. You face slightly leftward, and then this one, it's going to be -95 again. Same setup. Same thing here. And I probably wouldn't chain it. I mean, if you want to chain this, you can. I've seen people chain this, but it's not necessary. Again, when you're doing these X-facing semi-head hitter from corner, make sure your Z coordinate is 0.299999. You want to be on the very far edge, because otherwise you can get screwed by like a small angle difference that, you know, it's kind of a stupid mistake if you get unlucky, right? Get 3 taps here, jump up here. Okay, for this jump to the water, it's fairly easy. It's just kind of an awkward momentum. You do X.9 and then face 55, and you can get 2-tick or 3-tick. Although 2-tick looks a little scarier because you drop super low in the water. Don't run off this, of course. Get on the 0.001 of the edge on this corner. And then what you're going to do is you're trying to get to the fence. You're going to semi-head hitter facing something. I guess I don't have it written down. Maybe like 25. You can face -25 and you can chain to this trapdoor. Yeah, that'll work. Oh, but you don't hit the block in one version. Okay, so maybe like 23, 24 is better, just so it's more consistent what actually happens. There you go. It is notable here. You're not going to this block because of like a tier technical stuff, so you don't have to. You want to go to the trapdoor basically, and chaining it is perfectly acceptable. Now it is notable that you can shift off this. So if for safety, you might want to flick this trapdoor up before you attempt this next jump, for which the strategy is 0, face 16, 2 shift taps with W, and then practice, and you're going to Presky. And the main thing here is that you want to slow yourself down. You want to make sure that when you're grabbing this ladder, you end up here. You want to end up in the center where you're like securely between both sides. You don't want to end up too far to the left where you might fall off that way, and you don't want to end up too far out where you might slide off. You end up perfectly in the middle, with just really control it super well basically, because this gives you enough distance to make it. The main thing is just don't strafe early and hit the pane, and don't overshoot or undershoot the ladder, and just really pay attention to that. For this, you can face like 37 and semi-head hitter. It's no turn, no strafe, but I would probably turn in anyway, just to make sure that I don't run off or anything on this axis. Jump up here. And for this last jump, I might scoot back a bit, but you can do semi-head hitter facing like 40 for this jump after scooting back. And yeah, now you're on to the last set of couple islands here. So, for this first jump, obviously there's a pane here. You can just head hitter this. There is technically like a Presky setup. I don't know what the angle is, but you can like Presky out of that. I wouldn't bother just because it's so early in the map. Probably like 0.7, face like 35 here. Get like an early strafe. It's pretty lenient, not that hard. Let's jump just force momentum to this fence. And then you can head hitter from the back, but you can also do one shift tap back, and then semi-head hitter. Although the coordinates are a little bit precise. It has to be 0.23. Oh, sorry, that didn't even work. Am I lying to you? Maybe I'm lying to you. Oh, it's 0.33. Okay. All right, one unshift tap with W, one shift tap forward. That's why. Okay, so both the taps are forward. One shift tap forward, and then one shift tap forward, and then you semi head hitter. Coordinates are kind of precise. It is like 0.33. So if it's not working, then try to like adjust it manually, maybe. For this again, make sure on the 0.001 of the soul sand in order to not get affected by the like slowness. There are like run strats you could probably use, but I wouldn't really recommend them. I think head hitter is probably simplest, so you could use something like this, like 0.17 face -150 and get like a strafe after you pass the pane. And of course you could do something similar on the other side. For the slime, it is kind of janky because like you get like more speed than you want if you semi head hitter. So what you can do is if you face 160 from the back left, then you get a force momentum into the wall, which is going to make you lose sprint, but it's on purpose here. And the nice thing is it gives you about the right balance you want. You can either like strafe out on the slime, or you can like turn out. I think I would probably recommend strafing out regardless. And if you're on the other side, it's pretty similar. You're just going to do -160. But in this case, it's a little bit easier because you don't have to worry about like overshooting or like controlling your movement in this direction as much. For this, keep in mind that ladders, regardless of orientation, have the same grab hitbox. So it's still like a square around this. So you want to go basically perfectly 45 degrees, even if it didn't look like it. So scoot forward to X.7, face 45, 3 unshift taps with W, and then 1 shift tap, and then just force momentum. Because the grab hitbox is perfectly 45 degrees. You can just force momentum to this pane. Jump here, jump here. Jump to here, and jump to here. Now we have a kind of annoying jump. I couldn't find anything that wasn't a forced tick, so this is just gonna have to be a forced tick, I guess. You have a few different angles you can use. I don't know if there's much advice I can give you, but you can try like -139. I found it a lot easier to do like no strafe here. I imagine it depends on whether you're comfortable with like a 1-tick strafe. If you want to do like a 2-tick strafe, then -139 is like perfect for a 2-tick strafe, and you barely have to turn at all. You could also do like -141 with a 1-tick strafe. And both of those work, but if you want to do like no strafing, then -139 is a good angle for that. And that's just forced head hitter. You also have 2-tick chords, but they're kind of annoying to use unless you're doing a forced strafe. So I wouldn't really recommend them that much, but the general idea is you 2 shift taps back facing straight, and then you face like 142, and then you can do the same thing. You can have a 1-tick, maybe you can't do a 1-tick strafe with this, but same general idea. It's kind of like a 2-tick strafe chords, but just jump to this block. If you want a quick setup for this, you can do max Presky here, but that's only if you're like really lazy. I wouldn't recommend that at all. There's 2 different strategies you can use here depending on what like input you like. First one is -31. You do 2 shift taps and then 2-tick and retap. Alternatively, I'd probably recommend this other one. If you do 2 unshift taps and 1 shift tap back, then you can do head hitter and hold. And that's just nice because it gives you more time to stop yourself, I think. There is a tag down here if you want, but you have to do like 7 head hitter timings to get out of this pane area, and then you have to redo half of the island. So I mean, you can get it if you want to have fun, like Cup Stacking Kid did. For this, maybe scoot like 1 tap left, do an unshift tap forward, and then Presky. And then for this one, the Iron Bar Neo, of course you can head hitter it if you want, but you can also do face 100, 1 unshift tap with A, and then no sprint Presky. And that's anywhere between 1 to 3-tick Presky, so it's lenient. But you can also sprint from, I guess you can't sprint from here, sorry, it was, you can do a no sprint jam, but you kind of have to like force momentum it to go from here. So that's just like an alternate but kind of weird strategy. For this, I would say just do a forced tick. You can either head hitter from the front, you can do 2 taps. Oh my gosh, you can do 2 taps and 3-tick from the back, or you can do 3 taps back and 2-tick. whichever forced tick you prefer, whatever your lucky number is. This jump sucks, but there are like a few strategies you can use. If you don't want to chain, I wouldn't recommend this one, but it's just kind of like an alternate if you really can't find anything that works. 0.5, 155, 3 shift taps. Then you can 4 tick, and if you get like a 1 tick strafe, it's pretty lenient. One thing is that there is like one single barrier block right here for some reason. So that is something you can land on, worst case scenario, although I don't think that's something realistic to really land on in most situations. Usually you'll land on this slab instead, but that's the general idea there. If you want to try and get a 1 tick strafe, if you use that. Another strategy that's not very good is if you line up with the wall, maybe face a bit rightward, and scoot back until you're at Z.5. And then 164.6 is your angle. You need a jam. Maybe it's a little more inward. Jam, so 164.7, 164.8 maybe are a little bit better. But you want to jam, and then you want to strafe and turn in after you pass the iron bar. The advantage of this is it's kind of a simple turn, but it is kind of janky. If you turn early, then you'll hit and then the iron bar, and then you'll just be fine. But it is kind of like an annoying timing. And then a little bit more realistic of a strategy is if you get Z.6 on this wall, face 165.5, and then do a shift tap with D. Maybe it's 155.5, sorry. 156.5. Oh yeah, it's 156.5. Okay, so it's line up at Z.6, face negative 156.5, and then do a shift tap with D. And then you force momentum holding space. And that'll run 1 tick on the iron bar for you. And then you want to strafe 1 tick after jumping. This is kind of like the run strat, except it gives you a little more speed and it has a little bit of better angle as well. It's also just gets you more distance. So that's probably one of the nicest strategies. And then finally, if you want to let all hell break loose, I guess you can 2 tick and hold space and just kind of like turn and hope. And you can kind of get something to work. You kind of have to turn out. It's kind of weird, but you know, there's a few possibilities for how you could do that. Just run this, shift tap, force momentum, semi-headed or this. There's 3 block ceiling though. For ladder +2s, they're X facing, you face 30, semi-headed or 1 tick strafe in your sprint. This you can do like an unshift tap and force momentum this. For Z facing paint up, face 45. For X facing paint up, face 37. Go to this pane, you cannot make it to that one. This is Z facing, so face 135. This is X facing, so face 143. And this one is Z, so 45. For this jump, it says that it's a difficult climb. It's actually not that hard, it's fine. So you're gonna go to X.3 on the edge and face 74. So it's difficult. And then semi-head hitter. It's no turn, no strafe. So you don't really have to do anything for this. It's pretty easy. I just held space. That was not what I was supposed to do. It is notable. There's like a barrier wall here. If you fall here, there isn't any way to get up. You can look around if you want to, but you have to drop down here and then you go back to the previous island. So it's a life or death island, even though it doesn't really look like it. They just wanted it to be one, even though it was above the other island. It's kind of weird. Anyway, let's see this. For this phase, negative 177, do 1 shift tap A, 1 shift tap W, and then Presky. And you get to that ladder. There used to be a skip here where you could go from this ladder and you could jump to that slime to a ladder up there, and that'll take you to sky. But they added barriers here now, so you can't do that anymore. But anyway, you have to get to that ladder. There's a couple ways you can do that. First is there's like semi-head hitter chords like here, so you could do 0.5, 156 and semi-head hitter and do that if you want to. You can also find force momentum chords that don't hit the wall but also hit the ceiling. They go under the ceiling. So something like this, that was 166.7, 1 shift tap and force momentum. You can also force momentum from, semi-head hitter from here. Basically any of these are perfectly okay. This is facing 127 is that angle, and you semi-head hitter from the corner. This one's also pretty easy. Face like 130, and then you can semi-head hitter here. It doesn't really matter. Oops, I'm lagging a little bit. It doesn't really matter what turn or strafe timing you get because it's overall just really lenient. Just walk across this. For this, I would do a no sprint semi-head hitter, and then it's kind of a forced momentum, I guess. And then turn after you hit the slime because you don't want to overshoot the slime and land over here and then have to restart the island. For this, remember X facing, you want to line up with an imaginary back wall, so that's X.3 semi-head hitter. For this, I would probably face roughly straight, maybe 90.5, do an unshift tap, and then semi-head hitter and like do a little pre-turn outward. It's overall kind of janky, but you really want to make sure it's kind of controlled. So try to aim a little bit past the ladder and then start strafing a little bit inward a little bit before you get there so that you have time to like slow yourself down basically. That's the general idea behind this. I'm turning a little bit too early. You would want to turn a little bit later than what I'm doing, but that's the idea. And then click and jump up here. Walk across this gap. Don't jump across it. There's an LD hole here. Do that. For this jump, do any pet force momentum that's slower than like 3-tick force momentum. If you do fail, you can like jump back facing like 170, so it's fine. You can also do one unshift tap and then slow force momentum, which is when you sprint on the tick that you land. So that's cool. For this, just run off, don't jump. It's the easiest possible jump you could have. It's just press the button and hold it. Now you're on to the last jump. Of course, don't fail this. It is fail-safe kind of, but you lose progress, so don't. You need to go to X.3, face 74. Oh, sorry, I found it. All right, you're gonna go to Z.28, face -135, and the concerns are you can hit your head when you're escaping the slime on this block, and that's not going to be great. And then you also have to avoid this wall. So you basically want to do this like a paint up, except with like a smooth turn in to take it kind of wide. And then once you hit the slime, there are a couple ways you can do it. I like to like release strafe, but you can also like swap strafe. And that works totally fine. You can also turn out, whichever way you want to do that. It's overall kind of janky, and you kind of have to mess around and get a feel for the jump, but that's the general idea there. Click this head, and it'll teleport you to this iron bar. You're going to use the same strategy using Island 2, which is face 80, and then 4-tick with a 1 or 2-tick strafe. It'll no turn onto here, but of course if you fail, you can just click the head again. It's fail safe, it's fine. And then now bring you to Presky, which is the final stretch of the map. So now in terms of actually doing a sky, there are two main parts to this. First of all, sky on this map is a little bit weird because you have this whole like semi failsafe pre-sky section before you actually get to sky. So we'll go through that quickly first before you actually get to the life or death portion. For this, you can just jam because there's a hidden barrier right here. And then you have this Cairo paint up. I would start momentuming from here. You would face -91.7 or close to it, jam, and then strafe on the tick that you land on the last pane, and it'll just no turn it entirely. Alternatively, if you want like a slightly different timing, you can go from this stone slab, face 97, jam, and then hold space and strafe 1 tick after you jump off the pane. So it's 1 tick after rather than on jump tick. And you also are implicitly running a tick because you're holding space. So it's like kind of 2 ticks different from the other timing. The coordinates are also more lenient on that one, so that might be another reason you prefer that. For this, just face, I think it's 150. Yeah, face 150 for this with the back wall. I should quickly talk about if you fall, you should climb up using these trapdoors. You have to do like this little funny thing to get up here, but it's not too hard. Once you're up here, just momentum over here. You can do like -2 tick Pesky, or you can just run it. It doesn't really matter what you do for that. I would say probably sprint this jump to the red pane, just because it's not really necessary to no sprint it. I see people who no sprint it, they'll sometimes hit the wall and fall. You can just kind of do it like a normal pane up, because you may as well. There's no reason to give yourself less speed than you need to. For this jump, you're going to face -30, and you're going to, let me make sure it's -30. Yeah, it's going to be -30. You face -30, and you're going to semi-head it her. And you have to do like a sharp turn. It's kind of like a pane up, except you have to do it like even more of a turn. And you can't also overturn. You can also overturn on this, which makes it kind of annoying. I have an alternate strategy, but it's also kind of hard. It's kind of no turn-ish. You can go to the back left corner, face like slightly rightward of straight, and then do a shift tap with D. And then you're gonna do like force momentum. Yeah, I shouldn't do it like that. Basically, you can have toggle sprint on, and you're gonna walk 5 ticks with D, and then jump with W. Now the nice thing about this input is that even if you jump with WD by accident, you can still make it work, kind of. The reason why you can have toggle sprint on is because you're like hugging the wall, because I'm facing slightly right of straight. But it's kind of janky. But it definitely, if you get the input, it's a like unfailable turn. So that's definitely like an alternate strategy you can use if you want to. You have a couple more jumps. This part is no longer fail safe, so don't fail any of this. You can face about like 117. But of course don't accidentally land on there like I did. So you might have to do a bit of a later strafe for this, which might not be good. Maybe like -115 is pretty nice balance with like a early strafe but later turn is one way to do that. And you want to go on this side, not on the other side. This is the X facing side. Just semi-head to this. Make sure whenever you're doing this X facing version that you're on the true corner, so you can no sprint it and not hit the wall. And now you're officially on to Sky. This slime is annoying because you can no turn most of it, but not like all of it. It's kind of janky. I believe my angle is -175.5. Yep. Okay, so go to this back corner, face -175.5 and jam. And I'm just gonna physically let go of my mouse, and I'm just gonna keep holding W. It'll deal with these first 3 slimes, but what you'll see is that on this last slime, not only do I miss it, I also over jump the slime. Like I get too much speed in the direction that I'm going. Oh, I just lagged. That was weird. So I get too much speed in the direction that I'm going. So what I have to do is between this first and second last and last slimes, I'm going to waste a little bit of speed by holding D for a bit in the air. So I do these first 2 slimes and then this third slime, and I hold D for a bit. And then that's enough. That's sufficient to burn enough speed and move me over enough so that's not an issue. I would emphasize literally let go of your mouse during this, because what can happen is if you accidentally turn slightly, you might screw up one of these slimes that you're like barely landing. So that's why I would say like literally let go of your mouse. And yeah, I'll just do it one more time. So here's the second slime, and in between this third and fourth one, literally at any point during it, you can even wobble your A and D keys a little bit if you want to burn even more speed. Alright, go to this back corner, face like I'm gonna go 105 and head hitter. You can also do like 1 tap back and A7 if you want to do something straight. And then for this, you can face like -47 and head hitter, and it'll just go up. Doesn't really matter. That's a force tick because this is just a little tiny failsafe. Then you can force momentum onto this. For this pin up, face 143. There are fences down here. There's also barriers for some reason, so it's like this is completely safe. You're not going to fall off this. But from here, you're not going to be so safe. What you want to do is just 1 shift tap force momentum that. This obviously jump up here and semi-head it over here. But if you really want to, you can do force momentum. That's your cup of tea. Force momentum these, even if they're 3 block jumps, I feel like it makes it a little bit safer. Remember, for X facing Neos, line up with the imaginary back wall that's behind you, so that's going to be X.7, and then you can semi-head it, or both jam and A7 will work there. You can semi-head it or from the front of the block for this one, but you could also find some multi-tick from the back, like maybe, let's see, you can do as far as 5 tick, you can go as low as probably 2 tick, I guess maybe 3 to 5 tick. You can find some multi-tick there, it's not too precise. There are, of course, barriers below here. If you fall down here, then line up at Z35 and then jam. And the reason I say that is because this is tier 5. This trapdoor is up 1.1875 blocks, so if you're not careful, you can very easily underjump that. In terms of actually doing this jump, you want to go to the corner, face 135, semi-headed her with a 1-tick strafe, just like how you do paint ups. Basically every jump in this game, you're just going to do it like a paint up. It's all the same. It's all the same. Isn't too hard. For this, face slightly to the left, and then like stop yourself. Face slightly left, and stop yourself, and strafe out. For this, you can run this, and then stop, and then run the other one if you want. And then that's going to be a 4 to 5 tick on that last one. Or you can run this and then re-tap space, and it's important that you re-tap space because you could overshoot if you hold space. For this, you have a couple ways you can do this. You can semi-head it onto this. If you really want to OJ or strat, then you can like jam like that to be really safe. You can also like chain this to here to landing on the ladder. For both, regardless of what you do, you want to land on top of this ladder, but you can also start here, do 3 taps, and get anywhere between 3 and 4 tick probably. Might be able to 2 tick. Oh, I guess you can 2 tick from some chords, so 2 to 4 tick for that, not too hard. Jump up here. For this, you want to land on top of the ladder. Not quite sure what the angle is, but maybe it's like -140. Maybe -141. Yeah, I think it's -141 now that I remember. Yeah, -141, and then you want to no sprint jump back to stop yourself. So you're going to hold sprint on the first one and then release it after you jump. But of course, if you want to do it more intended way, then you would face something maybe not quite that far out, but like -110 with a later strafe and try to get very much in the grab hitbox rather than accidentally land on it. Line up with this fence, face slightly rightward, and then you can do anywhere between like 2 to 4 tick, I think. So if you get 4 tick, you're going to land on the snow. If you get 2 tick, then you're going to land on the ladder. But regardless of what happens, you're going to be fine. Just shift when you land and so that you're ready. Just semi-headed or this. If you really want to, though, you can find some multi-tick like that. You can also semi-headed or this. Again, if you want some crazy OJ or strat, then you can like hold space and W into this, and then you stop on the pane. So there's completely unfailable, basically, if you do it like that. This is probably one of the hardest jumps. This jump is kind of referenced again in XIII. XIII has an X-facing variant of this jump. So you can do -124 and semi-head hitter. Somewhat of a late strafe. You can technically pass with the 1-tick strafe, but you would have to do like a late turn. So you want to strafe at least 2 ticks after jumping, and then just like a tiny turn in to really get yourself on the right spot. Semi-headed or this, don't hit the X corner. Get to the front of this and semi-headed or you can sprint it or no sprint. It doesn't really matter. You can find some semi-headed or chords for this, something like this, -156 from 0.85, and then you just turn in after you bounce. Not too hard. Of course, you have a jam setup, and then you're on the last jump. So for this, I have a couple different ways you can do this. It is technically possible to go straight from the trapdoor to the ladder, but we want to kind of take advantage of the web because the web gives you a lot of time to get toward the ladder. It makes it a lot easier. So first way is a force momentum strategy. You go to X.09 and face -159 and do 2 shift taps. You can force momentum. The most important part is you want to strafe early. Like, that's the difference maker. It's not a fast force momentum. It's not a fast turn. It's an early strafe. That makes the biggest difference. Because if you get a late strafe, you're already cooked. Like, if you strafe 3 ticks after jumping, I think there's very little chance you're actually going to make it at that point. But if you strafe 1 to 2 ticks after jumping, you can get a lot of distance. One of the most important parts about this is I see too often that people will stay in the web for longer than they need to. You can see that the ladder hitbox particles are appearing. That means that I'm in the ladder, right? And even more important than that is I think you need to look at your coordinates. You need to look at your x coordinate in particular. When my x coordinate is greater than 0.0, I am now inside the ladder. And that's the point at which I need to just start shifting. So I can already be this far out and start shifting. Because I'll see people who will make a mistake like, let's see if I can get a good part of the web that I can jump into. If I can. Okay, something like this, where they'll be inside the ladder for a super long time, but then they'll like shift after they exit the web. You want to be shifting while you're already inside the web. Shift. Like, see how close that I'm really low. So if I kept on going and then I shift like now, I would already be too late. So that's one of the most important parts about this, is that people get the shift timing wrong. You need to pay attention to your coordinates. If I land this high up, then I should just like start shifting now, because I already know I'm already inside the ladder if I really want to be safe. And you would want to check both your X and Z coordinate. So if I'm back here, then of course I'm not inside the ladder at this point because I'm not far enough forward. But once I see the particles, or once I look at my coordinates and I say I'm inside the ladder, that's when you need to start shifting. You need to start shifting early, because people make some really dumb mistakes on this jump. Another thing, if you don't like force momentum, I actually like this strategy a little bit more. It's kind of similar. If you do 0.11 and then face -159, which is the same angle, you're just going to run it. And you can get 7 or 8 tick in both of them. It's the same general advice I gave before for the other strategy. It's just that this time, now it's running, and I think you can get a little bit more control on the exact strafe timing when you run. It feels a little bit more controlled, I think. It's also because it's a delayed timing that you can get a little bit better of an angle, I think. So that is all of rank 13. Ignore that. And then you rank up, and then you get onto this map that a lot of people consider like the best rank on Linkcraft. People really like XIV. People are obsessed with XIV. So it's really hard. But if you beat XIII, you're definitely ready for this. And so yeah, that'll be the end of this episode. Goodbye.